this, Burke. You're live on YouTube, and that's ready to go when you're ready.
You can get the chat settings going there.
Yeah.
All right, we're coming up here. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. First Alert Meteorologist Eric Burke alongside meteorologist Jeff Desnoyers. We've got our first severe thunderstorm warnings of the line of storms out in Mississippi is going to start to intensify as it crosses over the state line. Already seeing some areas of broad rotation. We're going to get right to the radar and show you exactly what we're talking about here. I just want everyone to know what's going on weather-wise. We do have a severe thunderstorm warning. This is a big one. It goes out an entire hour until 10:30, and that's for all of Franklin, Colbert, Lauderdale, and even parts of Lawrence and not quite to Limestone County. But that is exactly what we're looking at right now. We actually have a tornado warning in Mississippi. No warnings. Tornado warning, so we're just going to stick with the live coverage. Now, we do have reports already coming out of Mississippi here that some 18-wheelers have tipped over. Whether or not those are actually from just the normal gradient wind out there or if it's actually associated with the storms too. So some areas of possible rotation right now that prompted the tornado warning. We'll take a closer look at that right there. That's going to be southwest of the Belmont area. So if you're in Red Bay right now, parts of far western Franklin and eventually even Colbert County, just know that at any point we might be put under a tornado warning. We've got a tornado watch in effect until 1 o'clock. That includes Madison, Lincoln County, and everything to the west of there out into Mississippi. If you're in northeast Alabama, it doesn't mean that you are in the all clear. You might be put under a watch at some point. I'm going to check in with TMP really quick, our production team, and we'll let Jeff kind of catch everyone up of what's going on. Jeff, just talk over the radar right now before we get too fancy with it.
Yeah, what I want to do is I want to kind of point out really quickly, too. I'm going to go back to reflectivity and kind of zoom out a little bit. And let's get this kind of working in motion here, because a lot of times when you have thunderstorm activity, and we had this last, Wednesday night, storms weren't really in a hurry moving to the east. These things are flying. I mean, they're going like 55, 60 miles an hour. So what does that mean for you? It means that once we start popping some severe thunderstorm warnings like we already it moves across the area so quickly. And a lot of times when you have these thunderstorms, this line of thunderstorms in a very kind of linear area like this, where it's a very narrow line, what you can do is you can actually have it created some helicity with the speed that it's driving to the east, so to speak. And what I mean by driving, I mean moving quickly. And when you have that helicity created by itself, you can get these little spin-ups. And a lot of times it's not so much a powerful, strong tornado or a long track tornado, but you can have multiple spin-ups of like EF0s or EF1s along the entire line. And that's something that we'll have to watch. And we already have that tornado warning that's issued for parts of Mississippi with that line, where you start to see some of the kinks in the line where you could have some rotation.
And you know what's interesting with this already, Jeff? Look how little lightning we have. Just 7 strikes total. This is not like what we saw on Wednesday evening when Brad and Chelsea were tracking this for you. Very little lightning with this, and we always say, you know, we use that as an indicator of if things are intensifying or not. So we'll be watching that. I am going to go ahead. I'm going to put a storm track on this. I know that's what everyone wants to know. When is it going to start to move into our area? These are moving, what, 60?
Yeah, they're 55, 60, 65 miles an hour. So far through Mississippi, they've been flying.
Yeah, very fast moving. And right now, our atmosphere isn't the most unstable. It's going to be all day. It's going to continue to get more and more intense, and the line is expected to start to get more intense too. The farther east it moves. So I think we'll really start to see some of the biggest impacts coming up out of this. Probably as it gets into Lawrence County. Now, that doesn't rule out some spin-up tornadoes. I'm talking about the line as a whole will likely start to become more and more concerning there. We've got the storm track on it, so if you are in the Red Bay area, again, you might, if they extend this tornado warning, obviously we'll go into our continuous coverage on the television. The stream should be fine. Probably a good piece of advice here right now is that I would charge your mobile devices if you can, because we'll see power outages, not just necessarily from the severe line of storms moving in, but likely just because of these winds. And we're going to go check out the velocity to see kind of what kind of speeds we're working with out ahead of it. Look at that, Jeff.
Yeah, impressive. If you pull that down, remember, the radar's looking up, so it's scanning this above the actual surface. But if you can pull that wind down, that's what you get. That's game on when you get winds that strong with a line of thunderstorms like this.
Yeah, and obviously, if we continue to see more and more warnings issued, they will be very large. Like, look how far and large this severe thunderstorm warning is, because they're trying to give you as much lead time as possible. This is out an hour, where when we typically see the storms moving at 35 to 45 miles per hour, those polygons are much smaller, but also only go out usually 30 minutes. But these are going out a full hour now, and that trend may potentially continue. But we're going to get in a little closer here. Check out this area that prompted the tornado warning there in Mississippi. We are in all the chat rooms. We're keeping an eye on things.
You know, Eric, I think one thing too, and this is a gentleman that was just on in Colbert County, and I can't remember his name, Dustin. He was saying the winds are picking up already, and that just goes to show you don't have to be in the line of thunderstorms to have these winds preceding the line and also behind the line that could still be pretty gusty. I think there was a gust in Florence of 50 miles an hour already, and that's way ahead of the line at this point.
Yeah, and just the huge polygons, these are going to move quickly, which is also good news, because that means your severe weather threat is also going to be over very quickly. I want to see how big is actually this. That is almost a 50-mile wide polygon. Again, it goes out 1 hour. These storms are moving generally in a northeasterly direction. We've got this tornado warning, no active warnings for our counties yet. As far as tornadoes go, we do have a severe thunderstorm warning. Some of you probably just hopping on. Jeff, how many people we got in the room out of curiosity here?
About 1,000, almost 1,500.
Okay, I know Brad was doing a Facebook Live a little while ago, so we'll keep up this storm track here just to kind of give you an idea. We've got a tornado watch for most of our counties until 1 o'clock this afternoon. But all through the day, we'll be dealing with a concern of wind gusts 60+ miles per hour from the high wind warning, those gradient winds. So even though we'll say, you know, you're all clear from the severe weather threat right now, behind that, you'll still continue to see those very strong winds. I think we'll see power outages. We could see trees coming down. I know Brad was talking about trampolines. Jeff mentioned that this morning too. Please make sure that's secured in some fashion, because things will be blowing around a lot today.
I think a lot of times too, you know, you see the tornado watch issued, and Brad was talking about this on his Facebook Live earlier, and I think it's really important, like, where the tornado watch is covers most of the valley, but there's areas excluded, like Jackson County's not in it, and DeKalb County, you're not in it. And you look at the tornado watch, you say, oh, I'm safe. But keep in mind, these storms are moving very quickly, and just because you're not in the watch doesn't mean you can't have a tornado. The storms don't know where the watch is issued. They don't know what counties are issued into it. So a lot of times you see that and you think, okay, I'm okay. But there's also other things happening here besides just the tornadoes. There's also the chance for some strong winds preceding the line and behind the line, and also the potential for some straight line winds within the line itself that aren't tornadic that could still cause damage. And that's something to keep in mind as we go into the late morning hours. Areas that are not in the tornado watch still could have an impact.
Okay, and some good news coming out of Mississippi, and what I'm seeing with my own eyes. It's always nice when another meteorologist backs you up on what's going on in my head. But this area here that is west and southwest of Belmont, this was the area of rotation right here that prompted this tornado warning in Mississippi. It has weakened significantly. Jeff, you could see that. I just circled the area on the screen. But this is also the part of the line that we're going to continue to watch for potential spin-ups down the road. So if you're in Red Bay, this will miss you to the north, but this is going to continue to track northeasterly at a high rate of speed. So, and we always reiterate this fact too, just because this line isn't producing a tornado threat per se at the moment. They could obviously spin up at any second, but the winds in a straight line could do just as much damage as turning winds. So this area southwest of Belmont, that would be the area of that would likely potentially down the road prompt a tornado warning, and that would likely include parts of Franklin, Colbert, and Lauderdale. Again, behaving at the moment, but that could change at any second now. And for those wondering at home, maybe you already were on Chief Meteorologist Brad Travis's Facebook Live that he did from home. He will be joining us, so we'll have three sets of eyes watching the radar. Okay, so now we could use the BTI tool. See the skit here moved? So the BTI, when it probably gets to a 5 is when we start getting concerned with this here. But this is a severe thunderstorm warning, obviously moving northeast at 71. Did you talk about the low-level jet yet, Jeff?
Well, low-level jet is going to only enhance the winds, and that's something that you have to keep in mind too. Is when you have a line of storms like this, if you have a very strong low-level jet, you have winds a lot that you can pull down, and sometimes you can get some very heavy rainfall within the line of storms that can actually help tug those stronger winds aloft down, and the low-level jet will enhance the winds along with the line of storms that's already producing some big-time gradient winds before it and after it, and. These little spin-ups too, these happen quick. You were just talking about that rotation in Belmont, how it kind of flattened a little bit more broad. But, these quick little flare-ups of these spin-ups can happen so fast when the line's moving so quickly. And that's why if you are right now in Red Bay, or if you are in portions of Franklin County and maybe even into Russellville or Muscle Shoals or Florence, you're starting to maybe take those precautions at this point to say, hey, look, we see some development off to the south and west. It is moving to the north and east. Be proactive, have a plan in place. This is all going to happen very quickly with the way these storms are moving so fast. So if you are in areas like, even if you're in Killen right now, you're already kind of keeping an eye on this cell off to the south and west of you as it continues to move across the state line. If it were to continue to be warned, obviously moving so quickly, you want to make sure you have a plan in place ahead of time so that you can be safe. One thing too is we've had so much rainfall with this system. The last couple of days, it seems like one after another of heavy rain. We had flash flooding on Wednesday night. With the speed of this line moving so swiftly, even though there's some downpours with it, the overall threat for flash flooding will probably be reduced just because you don't have enough time for the rain in one area to really amount to much. But it's still a brief downpour here and there as that line continues to move. But if the line was moving slower, then flooding would be more of a concern. But with the line moving so quickly from west to east, that should limit the amount of flash flooding we have. But, just multiple elements when you have a line like this that's so narrow where you're tracking multiple threats. You have the winds, you have straight line winds, you have the tornado threat, and that's something to keep in mind. One thing you don't have to worry about as much when it's moving that fast, though, is flash flooding, which is good.
Yeah, and just continuing to look at this, the rotation not as worrying as it was when it prompted the warning, but this area again near Belmont, Mississippi, north of Red Bay and south of Tishomingo, this area right here, basically over Belmont. I think Memphis had reports of what do we got coming in? Monroe County, 50 knot gust right before power failure. So 58 mile per hour winds. That's obviously severe winds. That warrants the severe thunderstorm warning by Huntsville here. And then you could also see, if you've got people down in Marion County there, that there's a big polygon even to the south of this too. So they're basically warning this entire line as it continues to come in from west to east. But right now, we've got active severe thunderstorm warning. Look how fast this is moving. It's almost like every scan, Jeff, it continues to, it's just flying through here. So again, we'll get a good storm track on this. We'll say 60 miles per hour. And that is, that's everything you need to know right there. So out to Cherokee here. 9:53. It's 9:46 on your Friday, first alert weather day. You're watching coverage with Eric Burke and Jeff Desnoyers here. Gravelly Springs 9:58, Hodges 10:01, Crooked Oak 1002, Russellville 1006, Tuscumbia 1008, Littleville there at 1009. So I'm going to read this really quick, Jeff, if you just want to keep...
Yeah, definitely. What you got to do, too, is how fast, since we just started this Facebook Live, think about how quickly that line's moving, right? I mean, we were talking about it, how it was just, still in Mississippi. Now it's making that progression east and crossing the state line. And again, not a lot of lightning with this. You're looking for some kind of lightning, and it's just not like that. It's one of those things where you look at it, and it looks kind of just like a little bit in the way of a heavy rainfall event, right? I'll kind of move this back over a little bit so you can see it. But yeah, I mean, it's not something that really jumps out as something where you see a whole bunch of lightning strikes with it, and you're looking at the potential for light where we're seeing strengthening. You usually look for a pocket of lightning, right? You want to see where this storm is developed. This is not like that. This is not like a supercell that's developing. It's going to have a long track tornado. This is going to be something that has these little pop-ups on it across the line. And now that it's crossed the state line and into our area, we have to be concerned as it moves into areas to the west, towards areas like Lauderdale County, into areas like Franklin County, so areas like towns like Cherokee, and we can move in even a little bit closer. And areas just to the west of Russellville, Rockwood, Littleville. This is the time when you start thinking about what your plan would be to be in place if this storm would continue to hold a tornado warning and have some kind of evidence of a spin up where you can have time to take shelter.
And something I want to point out here too, Jeff, I know we're focusing on obviously the Polygon and the severe thunderstorm warning, but we're actually getting reports coming out of Jackson County of signs damaged out in Section, and those are just the general gradient winds. I'll probably do a cut-in on TV here just to let everyone out there toward the Quad Cities, Florence, Muscle Shoals, a significant wind coming your way, and that's certainly something we'll continue to monitor. Obviously, the stream not going anywhere. I'm probably going to pop on TV here for about a minute or two, and then we'll come right back to the stream. You'll be able to see that too. So hang on one sec.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and just kind of tap into this just for a moment. Is I'm going to circle this area right here for y'all, and this right here. Okay, you see where the line of storms are, and they're moving across the state. But if you're in that circled area right there, you're still going to get some what we call like gradient winds or winds be preceding the actual line itself. And they're going to still pack a punch of like 40, 50 mile an hour winds. And that can still cause damage. You don't have to be in the line. So even if you are east of this line, you're probably starting to feel the effects already. A few of you in chat that live just east of this line have said you already have some kind of winds where you are, and we'll continue to track that. You don't have to necessarily be in the line itself. It's a very narrow line. You don't have to be under the actual reds and yellows to have impact right away. It's going to happen preceding the line before it gets to you.
Really quick, Jeff, when I do this cut-in that's coming up in just a second on the router panel, can you make sure to go from Weather 48 to Prod 1, and that will show the on-air feed. So if you're watching on the Facebook live stream, you might see black screen here for a little bit. Nothing's wrong with your phone, just how we're transitioning sources here. But in back, Megan, I am ready whenever you are. Again, this will probably just be a couple minutes, and we'll send them right back to the stream.
Today is a 48 First Alert Weather Day.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Meteorologist Eric Burke here. I've got meteorologist Jeff Desnoyers over in the 48 Weather Center, tracking a line of severe storms right now crossing over from parts of northeast Mississippi. We have an active severe thunderstorm warning right now, and that's going to include parts of Franklin, Colbert, and Lauderdale County, this area that is circled right now at the moment, where we're looking for additional development. Now, we did have an area of rotation out into parts of Mississippi, and that's been concerning too, but that prompted a tornado warning, not here, but it does look like we'll continue to watch this line as it moves from west to east for those areas of rotation. Now that I've got my hand tracking back, we could take a closer look at this. We have a tornado watch in effect until 1 o'clock from Madison County to Lincoln County and everywhere to the west. Now, just because you're in northeast Alabama right now and you're not in that tornado watch does not mean you won't be put under one later this morning. We actually think this line is going to start to intensify as it moves from west to east. It's going to start to move into this more unstable air as our temperatures warm up and the humidity. On top of that, we've got a high wind warning, and this high wind warning goes until 6 o'clock. So we just have general winds, not even storm-related winds with this, gusting potentially 50 to 60 miles per hour, if not even stronger. So I really think it's going to be a busy day as far as the weather goes. I want you to be aware and just know that this line of storms is moving east-northeast at 60 miles per hour. So when we put a storm track on this, and I'll try and give you guys some big lead times with this just because of how fast this is moving. Some of you, to find your safe spot, it takes roughly 10 to 15 minutes to actually get there. But Grovelly Springs, you've got 9:58. Crooked Oak, 10:06, Tuscumbia, 10:10. If you are just joining us right now on TV, I also want to let you know that we have a stream going. You can find us on YouTube right now. We're on the WAFF 48 Facebook page. You can jump in. This little cut-in from the Today Show, only going to last a couple minutes here. Just want to give you a heads up if you're just waking up, maybe potentially. You got the Sheffield, Florence, Tuscumbia area, 10:10, Muscle Shoals, 10:12. And then St. Florine, 10:14. So this line of storms is moving at 60 plus miles per hour. One thing I want to point out, it's not as narrow as it was initially. And when it starts to broaden out a little bit, we kind of lose a little bit of our concern, but also watching for any notches in this segment. We'll actually take a look at some of the velocity products here and also the shear rate tool that you often see Chief Meteorologist Brad Travis using. Kind of helps us look at the line a little more intently, but when we start to see areas potentially south of you here in Cherokee, and then you go into parts of Franklin County, this is also just moving so fast, and the winds aloft. You go a few hundred feet off of the ground here, and that's where the radar beam is actually hitting this oftentimes. That wind from the south, or the low-level jet as we call it, is actually probably 90 miles per hour. I'll show you an example here. When we use the velocity tool, with how quickly this is moving, we could use this dropper tool. Again, this is not at the surface. I'll say that a couple times. Look at the wind speeds we're potentially pulling up. There you go. There's your 90. That's what I meant to click on right there. 81 miles per hour. Not at the surface, but those winds could potentially get pulled down. So tracking this, again, this line of storms, we've got a severe thunderstorm warning right now. We could turn on some of the lightning, not nearly as much lightning as what we saw on Wednesday evening when we were tracking those storms for you. And also this continues all the way off to the south too. You've got Hamilton here, and that might actually start cutting off some of the energy moving into our part of the storm that's here now in northwest Alabama. So tornado watch continues until 1 o'clock. We have a severe thunderstorm warning right now, a lot of wind about to move into the Florence, Tuscumbia, Muscle Shoals, Sheffield area, eventually into Killen if you're in Cherokee right now. And I'm actually going to take a look at the hail, and we haven't got any reports of that. And it's really, on the big scheme of things, probably our least concerning thing is a threat for large hail with this. We just really need to watch this line for any breaks in rotation. But notice how that is starting to broaden out from west to east here. That's usually a sign it's not as organized as it was. But even ahead of this, before this even moved over the state line, the line itself, we were seeing winds 50 miles per hour. Non-storm related, just general gradient winds with this. So all in all, a very, very busy morning underway. Keep checking back for the latest. We hope you join us over on YouTube or on our Facebook stream. And of course, we will cut into programming as needed. So for meteorologist Jeff Desnoyers and myself, meteorologist Eric Burke, we'll keep you updated. We've got team coverage, a lot of wind with this, and a potential tornado threat as well over the next couple of hours as this line continues to intensify, moving from west to east. On the routing. Oh, excellent. Thank you. Can we go back to Weather 48 Max 1? Just trying to keep the stream. All right. All good. So yeah, a lot of wind with this, and when they initially put out the severe thunderstorm warning, I was talking at the beginning of the stream about how big the polygon is that goes out an entire hour here because of how fast this is moving. First of all, Jeff, I think it might be slowing down a little bit.
Yeah, it was moving really fast, and it started to almost like kind of have a little bowing to it at one point where, you got to watch that slowly. But as it kind of crossed the state line, it looks like it hit the brakes just a little bit going towards Florence. But, that's still packing a punch. There's not a tornado warning right now, but one could pop at any moment with the way the setup is for today. And nonetheless, there is a severe thunderstorm warning for a large chunk of northwest Alabama, goes all the way down to Hackleburg as well. And preceding the actual line itself is going to be a big-time wind maker ahead of it. You could have winds associated with the line itself. And whether you have winds that come straight down or they're spinning, they still can cause damage either way. And that's something with this storm. A lot of times you think, I don't have a tornado warning, it's going to be just fine. But severe thunderstorm warning is issued for a particular reason, and that's because it could be damaging winds. And that's something that could affect you, your property, and that's something we're watching as it moves across the state line.
Yeah, couple of comments that I want to point out. Someone said a bad day to be a trucker. If you're just joining the feed, again, we've got reports of 18-wheelers over in Mississippi. Someone said lightning out there. I think it was Tuscumbia. Yes, that's just off to your west. Not nearly as much lightning as what we saw the other day, but also something I want to point out that was just mentioned by the National Weather Service in Memphis. They said we really need all of your help to stress the high wind warning. First and foremost, Jeff, this is such a rarity around here. Jessica, no tornado warning at the moment. We just have a severe thunderstorm warning for Franklin, Colbert, Lauderdale, parts of Lawrence County. And when does that warning go through? That goes through 10:30. So we've got another half an hour on that. Another good point. I'm glad this is daytime. We don't always get severe weather during regular business hours, which is convenient because with the nighttime events, a lot of you are just wondering, hey, when can I go to sleep? But going back to the high wind warning, it's such a rarity. Typically, we only see these when we're tracking a weakening tropical storm or hurricane as it moves across the Tennessee Valley. So it's basically going to be feel like that, just without the rain and the oppressive humidity that we often see here. I like that the line is really starting to kind of expand width-wise. That means it's not as organized, although we will have to watch certain things like this.
Right.
Cut me off at any time, but you kind of saw what happened the other night there, where that's going to be something that we need to keep an eye on. Doesn't look overly concerning on velocity. See what the shear is. Again, we mentioned we don't like to use this term weak.
Right.
Any rotation is not good rotation, but almost all storms do tend to have some form of rotation. And also going back to that tornado watch, I mentioned, if you're in northeast Alabama, you're not in that watch. Well, guess what? The Weather Service in Huntsville now coordinating with the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, and they will likely have you under a new watch. That one, if I were to guesstimate, I would say would probably go until 2 p.m., probably 3 p.m., and then they like to just call it off a little bit early too. But right now, if there's anyone out in Florence, Muscle Shoals, Cherokee, other than heavy rain and probably some gusty winds, what are you guys actually seeing out there?
A lot of people saying that the wind has become really bad in Florence. That's from JC right there. And also winds picking up in Decatur. I had a few comments that the winds are picking up in Huntsville and Arab. And keep in mind, think about how far east some of those locations are where people are saying the winds are picking up. We've had gusts all morning up to 25, 35, 40 miles an hour, and that's way ahead of this line. And that just goes to show you the scope of the kind of winds that we could be seeing with this system. And obviously, the severe side of things you want to keep an eye on, but you don't have to be right on top of this line to have those strong gusty winds. Many of you saying that you're way ahead of it and already getting winds. And somebody just asked, what winds are picking up in Decatur? What time for Decatur? You see the timeline here. The storm is moving, the line itself is swiftly moving east. And therefore, if you're like in Athens or if you're in Decatur or if you're in Rogersville and you see the storm and the line is way off to your west, it's going to catch up with you pretty quickly. We put some times here for you so you can see that. And the severe thunderstorm warning doesn't go all the way out to Athens and Decatur, but you can see that the timing of it it's moving quick and it's going to impact the area. So if you do get a little spin up on there, a lot of you commenting about that little area just south of Cherokee. Let me zoom in on this right here. And a lot of you are saying, hey, that looks like a hook. I see what you're saying and I get it. I don't think that we're seeing any rotation there, something that we'd have to keep an eye on, of course, south of Cherokee. But right now, this entire line moving off to the line itself is moving east, but the embedded thunderstorms are moving kind of northeast as we see it move across areas of Florence and Muscle Shoals shortly.
Yeah, pointing out looks concerning. Now, features like this might actually start to happen more frequently as we go through the next couple of hours, because you also have to think about the winds rushing into this.
Right.
And that has a lot to do with how fast this line is actually moving. Taisha's in North Florence is extremely windy. Well, bad wind in Moulton, and if you're telling us that from Moulton, those are just the normal winds too that we're talking about. So you're out there in Lawrence County, the southwest winds ahead of this, and we mentioned that low-level jet, that's going to also interact with the line that's kind of moving. I feel like teaching trigonometry here with my arrows. It's moving east-northeast, and then you're naturally going to get some shear coming out of this too. So seeing a convective wind surge, yeah, that's down there toward Hamilton. That's from Birmingham.
Also, too, keep in mind that you're not in the severe thunderstorm warning for our Tennessee viewers, but I would imagine that there's still some pretty gusty winds approaching Lawrenceburg right now, and maybe even into portions of Pulaski as well, preceding that line. I know there's not a severe thunderstorm warning there, but in that area right there along 43, if you're making that drive from Killen up to Lawrenceburg, I would imagine that there's some pretty strong gusty winds preceding the line there as well.
Yeah, and just putting a storm track on that. Still getting more reports. We've got power outages now in the Fackler area and Skyline areas. That's only just over 200 customers. Can you try and ban that spam that keeps popping up in there?
I tried to
we really need someone on staff that solely just bashes the spammers here. I'm sorry you guys have to deal with that, but walking, talking, chewing gum, and covering storms at the same time. But yeah, here's another look at that storm track here. You're not in the severe thunderstorm warning. Again, that's also controlled by the National Weather Service in Nashville. And given the current trend, Jeff, I don't even know if this warning would be extended. But I say that we're also starting to move into the more unstable air. And that unstable air is right here. And this morning, if you were watching our newscast, we said this thing is probably going to ramp up along and east of I-65. So going back to that point, the new tornado watch will come out sometime within the hour, and that will likely add Marshall, Jackson, and DeKalb, probably some counties to our south as well. But that will be a new tornado watch. Still watching out for the threat not to be overlooked. The normal winds and also the straight line winds. I know we always have a lot of you, and we try and stress this, that spinning wind, straight wind, same thing, can cause the same amount of damage too.
Yeah, and is there a way, Eric, that on that particular computer, we could throw the tornado watch up there just so we show people where that tornado watch is on there? Or
can.
Yeah. Because it's almost one of those things where we've been talking about it all morning on air, that some of the higher instability is actually east of 65. And a lot of you at home may be saying, well, if the tornado watch doesn't cover that area, what's happening? You got to remember, it's a work in progress. So as we continue through the morning, more and more counties may be added to that tornado watch. And it's something as we go through the morning hours, may see areas like Jackson County, DeKalb County, areas in northeast Alabama start to get put into that tornado watch. Right now, you're not in it. And that tornado watch is, you know, when you look at it and you think you're not in it, you think, oh, I'm okay. But that's not the case. In fact, some of the best scenarios of what we have setting up the ingredients may actually be for areas actually not in the watch right now, which is, areas like in Scottsboro or Bridgeport or Ider or Pisgah or areas towards like Rainsville and Gunnersville. And that's something to keep in mind as we go through the late morning hours.
And the tornado watch graphic should show up right now. Now, interesting enough, the Weather Service in Birmingham was also in that conversation with Huntsville and the Storm Prediction Center. And actually, I'm going to have to kind of backpedal on some of my words here. They're saying that they're going to hold off on any further watch issuance or expansions just for a little bit, just to see how this, just to see how this evolves here. Maybe they're seeing what we're seeing, which is, okay, so severe thunderstorm warning. Now this goes for Colbert, Franklin, Lauderdale, Lawrence. Again, these, you might have heard Chelsea talking about this the other day when they were tracking storms, about the tornado possible tag. And I think we were talking a lot about that spin and shear out there. And these will be spin-ups. We're not talking about the embedded supercell threat. This is what we typically see. We've got fairly low cape. Now the cape will increase the farther east you go, but we've got that high shear environment. So a lot of spin.
Kind of have two things at play here. You want to look for a little bit more in the way of cape values or instability, but to compensate for the lack of that, you have the potential for higher shear with the storms moving so quickly. It's kind of a wait and see game to see which one plays out. That's why these particular spin-ups could happen so quickly. Thank you all too for so many updates about where you're at. A couple really very knowledgeable weather. Like Lauren says, the sun hasn't come out in Boaz. I'm okay, limiting the factor. Am I gonna have a cap? I mean, I think what happens is a lot of times in this situation, you might not need to pop some sunshine to still create enough instability in the WAFF as we go to the late morning, early afternoon. But that's a great point to bring up. We haven't popped the sun.
Yeah, we're not talking about the 1,000 plus 1,500 joules per kilogram that we had Wednesday evening, but with a line, it doesn't take the huge cape to get this threat. And also want to point out, you see this kind of narrow line of non-severe shower activity. Well, there's a lightning strike there just northwest of Fulton, but that will kind of just linger through. And once the line goes past your home, your severe weather threat is over, but we still have the high wind warning. And this could be one of those days where we actually have more damage probably after the fact, through the rest of the morning and afternoon, after the line goes through your community, that when those winds are coming up, that could start falling some trees and power lines and stuff. So you're watching on your phone, your tablet, maybe you're just even on a desktop Facebook, although I don't even know if many people do that too often anymore. We have it just for streaming purposes. You're using your phone's battery. Why don't you charge your devices when you can? So keeping an eye on it. The severe thunderstorm warning will continue. This goes through 10:30. Not sure if it will be extended. It's 10:09 right now, and it's starting to take on. It was a little thinner or thicker, now getting a bit thinner again. Still having to watch areas, potentially up here, or these little notches in the line. But when you go to the storm relative velocity, it doesn't show up as the same as when you have the reflectivity on too. But we are not in the all clear. It could be a long morning here, so just bear with us, be patient, be polite to each other in the chat.
Yeah.
And we appreciate all your input. And if you are giving us storm reports, obviously, including your location, that would be super, super helpful.
Yeah, a lot of people, somebody just asked, I don't understand what town's getting hit. Well, you look at the radar, you can see areas like out towards Florence and the Shoals, the line right there, all the way almost parallel to 43 right now. So if you're in Killen or Russellville, I can zoom in on all the different towns that you see here. and areas working essentially from 43 south. So Littleville, Crooked Oak, you had some severe weather Wednesday night too, a little rotation near you, Rockwood, Leeton, all this Hatton, all moving east. So these are all the towns that are getting into where that line's moving to very soon. So if you're in Anderson or Lexington, all the towns mainly to the west. So you're seeing that impact with the heavy rainfall. A lot of you saying in Florence, it's absolutely pouring. The good news is the line's moving so quickly that heavy rain will not be a long duration event. So we're not looking at any kind of flash flooding. But areas to the west where these storms are moving, it's moving so fast to the east. So I just named a whole bunch of towns that are getting impact right now. But if you are preceding the line, so what I mean by that is if you are, I don't know, areas like in Moulton or Hartselle or Decatur or Athens and Double Springs and Coleman, I'm just trying to name a whole bunch of towns so everybody hears their town. But it's this area right in here. You're already getting some strong winds preceding the line itself, all the way from Pulaski south to Coleman County, Double Springs. And you don't have to be within that line to have the storms impacting you in terms of what the winds are doing preceding the line. And Eric brought up a great point. And that point is that behind this line of storms that are moving through areas in western portions of Alabama at this time, you have the potential for some very heavy winds or very strong winds behind the line itself. And it might end up being a play this afternoon where we get more damage from the winds preceding the line and behind the line than the actual line itself. And that would, of course, mean that we weren't sparking widespread spin-ups across the line itself. But, there could be more action behind the initial line as it moves through areas of the Tennessee Valley this morning.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back really quick to the tornado watch graphic. They're starting to shave these counties so quickly once the line moves through, too. What's interesting is the lack of lightning.
Yeah.
I thought we'd see quite a bit more lightning. I'm going to put the counter on for you. 13 strikes, and that's over that big area. When you zoom in a little closer and take out that Hamilton storm,
it drops off.
Yeah, we've got 7 strikes right now. So still watching for these areas that could potentially spin up quickly here. But at the moment, there's going to be a lot of wind associated with this. Now, a lot of the wind is above the surface, and that's what the radar beam is hitting you, is hitting when we do the pixel query too. But lot of wind, and that wind could potentially get pulled down.
Robbie just said the daycare is on Highway 43. It's horrid. Robbie, if you could let me know what part of 43. It's a big, long highway. Are you close to Russellville? Or are you a little closer to the Shoals? Or are you closer to Killen? But yeah, I think anywhere along 43 right now, it's a heavy rain wind event for sure. And then preceding it, obviously, areas like in Moulton start to get the effect.
To go back to the high wind warning element of things, ahead of this line, we're getting reports from Lawrenceburg up there in Middle Tennessee. A power pole with lines down across the road, Old Florence and Pulaski Road, location 8 miles southeast of Lawrenceburg. Now, I'm guessing that was ahead of the line even coming through. So, again, it's going to be very difficult to determine with the storm reports, if and when they come in, if this was actually associated with the line or it's just one of the general winds coming through this. Watching this line very closely for the notches forming, but I'm more than okay to report that no notches are forming too, and this is moving quick. Now, as it continues to move east, again, it might enter a more unstable environment, so we're trying our best to just let everyone know downstream of when things are going to start happening for you. So I'll put this storm track up and leave it up here for probably a minute just so people can digest it.
Yeah, it looks like Randall saying some strong winds and Phil Campbell. Thank you so much for the update. Rod says just hitting now Muscle Shoals, probably getting some rain and some wind in the shoals. Bill putting a little bit of advice on there on the Facebook Live saying tie down your swings. Yes, tie down your swings.
Oh yeah, that's those would easily become flying objects there. Out in Aberdeen, Mississippi, a hangar door was blown off the Monroe County Airport, and a power pole was broken as well.
So some reports of some damage, not a lot of it, but still some, indicating that we are getting those strong winds with it, with the line itself. And Haley says the winds are picking up in Hackleburg. Thank you for your update. And Tuscumbia, winds are howling and rain is strong, says Clay. And power out in Hodges, says Dylan. Dylan Scott, thank you very much.
Out in Hodges,
And
okay.
Edward Brad is coming in. He should be here. Last we knew he was coming in mid to late morning.
He was getting ready.
Yep.
He did his live stream and was continuing to get ready, but he will be joining us. I guess maybe that area near Phil Campbell. It doesn't look it. The reflectivity. Now, also want to point out we've been obviously talking about this Friday line of storms for what feels like forever now, but just a few days, and how the model data has varied. But at one point, it had that super narrow band showing up on the future radar tool, and you could see that it is a narrow band, but it's not necessarily as narrow as it was coming through. And if we did have that narrow band right now, I'd be a little more concerned with a real wind threat at the moment. But yes, we've got strong winds, gradient winds, storm winds, but not the wind that potentially could be associated with a line like this. Want to go a little farther off to our south, out toward Hackleburg now. We'll have to watch that little area because we are seeing a lightning uptick too. I know Hackleburg, and not necessarily in our viewing area, but that is something that should be that we'll start to be watching. So, and we're going to start doing some street level stuff. We are getting reports from you guys there, Florence, Sheffield, Tuscumbia, Muscle Shoals, the Quad City area. This is potentially where we're going to start to hear reports of people losing power. And if you can, I want you to charge your devices. If you're just watching the stream at home and you're by an outlet, why not? So we got a storm report, 4 miles southeast Muscle Shoals, wind gust 53. Okay, an artifact of the data. Let's see what they're talking about really quick. All right, Killen, Leeton, you guys are next. This is all just going to come rushing your way very quickly. And if you're in Florence, Sheffield, Muscle Shoals, and Tuscumbia, wait about 10 minutes, and then your threat for a severe storm-related wind gust will come to a quick end here. Use our storm relative velocity. All right, we're going to go into continuous coverage here on air, not because we have a tornado warning, but just because we think the wind threat potentially is affecting enough people that it's worth our time to go over and go on air. So really quick, let me chat with Jeff. Let me read.
One thing that we're going to be monitoring too is this line of storms with the wind that's coming in, and we'll probably start to see it a little bit more as we go, as the storms continue to the east and we start to get into the high top radar. But nonetheless, power outages getting reported, and that's one thing that a lot of you are actually saying. One of you just asked me on the Facebook Live, they said, "Hey Jeff, what about Cortland?" And Eric and I are both covering this, letting people know that in Cortland right now, you are just to the east of this particular line. You probably have some winds already. The time frame for you will be in the Cortland area probably in about 10, 15 minutes. Let me draw a little bit of, take this out. So this thing's racing. We'll put just 50 miles an hour. So that puts it Cortland about 10:35. So yeah, about 15 minutes. That makes sense. And the winds themselves picking up with the heavy rainfall. Keep in mind, this is the kind of wind that's preceding the line and the winds associated with the storms and even behind it that can cause power outages, and that's something that we'll be tracking as we go into the morning hours. And I'm sure numerous reports of power outages, not just from you all here on the Facebook Live, but also reports coming in from areas that aren't even in this line of thunderstorms. And that's something to keep in mind as we go into the morning hours. You don't have to be in this long extended line of storms to be getting effects. It's already bringing some strong winds preceding it all the way to like I-65. Somebody wrote on here, I'm in Scottsboro and it's sunny. I don't have anything going on. That's because the storms are still west of you. This is an impact for areas like in Scottsboro by like late morning. So you got to let the storms get to you.
Okay, we're going to continue the stream. Can you switch me over to Prod 1, please? And then I'm going to go to the green screen, and then that way you could see me on the stream. I didn't know that was up. That's thank you, Drew. Also, Jeff, just keep clicking through all the different Weather Service chats because
it's tricky when you have a storm where it is now. It's like crossing out of one National Weather Service into another, and so you have a whole bunch of a meeting.
Can you see me on the stream?
It's still a little bit delayed, but I will probably see
as soon as I pop up. So we've got this very strong line of wind coming through right here. Now there's, if people start losing power, especially out toward Muscle Shoals, Florence, Tuscumbia, Sheffield, we're going to start to figure out very quickly because they're going to report that they're, without power. But you can see the end of the rainfall is right behind it. Now, something we do have to watch is kind of this secondary feature coming in. It is sub-severe, but this might pack another additional punch of wind coming in behind it. So you'll see a break for a while, but then you look over the state line into northeast Mississippi. That's about to come in behind it. Sub-severe, but worth watching for sure. And we're going to try, we'll go down to Russellville right now, out to the Russellville area. Still watching for any of these areas of rotation. Severe thunderstorm warning will continue here. 60-mile-per-hour winds. Not seeing any hail concern with this. They haven't extended anything beyond that initial polygon here, which they are starting to shave that polygon out of parts of far western Franklin, Colbert into Lauderdale County. But looking at the reflectivity signature here, we'll have to start watching these areas. But if you're out in Killen, and eventually toward the Leeton area, this kind of wall of wind, essentially, think almost gust front that we typically see sometime, will be coming out your way. Zoom in really quick. You've got Town Creek there. You've got the Cortland area. If you're in Littleville right now, this is all kind of surging west to east. You've got Old Bethel here. We've got Russellville, Rockwood area, and then you've got Phil Campbell. So this is all going through right now. And if we start to see power outages, we'll kind of have a somewhat idea of the wind speed that we're dealing with this. But it's just moving by so fast. This line itself is moving at 60 miles per hour. And I'm going to put another storm track on this. Jeff, can you see me on the stream?
I sure can.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. I didn't know we had that available the whole time. That's kind of a mistake on my end, I will admit to that. But this is where the wind is going. Again, here's the end of the severe thunderstorm warning. This goes through 10:30. I've got 10:23 right now, so this goes for an extra 7 minutes. My guess is they'll probably extend this for continuity purposes, and we'll also start to had a gust report from a spotter along the line, 53 miles per hour. That's Wilson Dam Road and Highway 72 there in Colbert County. So a severe wind gust, excuse my stomach rumbling there, is 58 miles per hour. So the one report we got out there at Wilson Dam Road was sub-severe, but that doesn't mean we don't have severe wind within this. We'll go back to that shear rate tool, and when you start to see that maroon color, that's when we get really concerned. But this, a lot of that wind is right there along Highway 43. All the way up from Florence there, and that's that main road you take down to Russellville. We'll probably get some reports of some trucks potentially blown around with this, but if you're in Hatton, Moulton, this moves through. You could ask the people on the stream, how fast did it actually move through? My guess would be about a 15-minute window before you see that initial heavy rain and then the gusts of wind coming with it. We'll go up to the north here, out to the Killen area. This is coming for you in Lexington. And Lexington, you are at the very edge of the polygon here. Trees, power lines down. That's Allsboro Road, Highway 72 in Cherokee. Frankfort, Highway 72, Tuscumbia. Carter Drive in Tuscumbia, and the power is now flickering in Muscle Shoals. So you've got St. Florine here. You've got the Killen area. And now this is moving west just east of the area of downtown Muscle Shoals, but still some strong wind coming in behind this with kind of the gradient winds coming in. You've got Littleville, Leeton, Old Bethel, Russellville, again Rockwood, and we'll go down to you in Phil Campbell. If you're in Phil Campbell, this is right on top of you. You're probably feeling or seeing that surge of wind coming with this. Jeff?
Yeah, I think one thing to remember too, as the line continues to move east, and there's no tornado warnings at this time, okay? But when the line continues to move east, if you are east of this line, you still have the potential for an isolated tornado. But going to the west of the line itself, so like if you're in Cherokee or closest to the state line of Mississippi and Alabama, that tornado warning is pretty much over for you. Like that threat for a tornado, I should say, is over for you. We had one prompted tornado warning in Mississippi. It did not carry over into Alabama. But that line, now that it has moved east and towards Russellville into Florence and continuing to move east closer to areas into portions of like Moulton and Cortland, if you are west of this line, that tornado threat for you is pretty much done. You know, now it's just dealing with the high winds behind the line itself that will continue to bring the potential for some damage.
Yeah, and still just getting reports of some trees and power lines down out in Colbert County. I mentioned just some of the random reports coming in of these, and then we had that 53-mile-per-hour gust along Wilson Dam Road. So it's good to get these kind of actual measurements to know what kind of wind we're working with here. And one of the things I want to point out is the reason we're not using this velocity tool in particular is because with the radar down in Columbus, Mississippi, we're hitting this well off the ground. So we've got a ripping wind from the south, that low-level jet that we continue to tell you about. You go aloft here, and that's moving at 90 miles per hour, but it doesn't give us the ground truth. It's kind of misleading in that regard there. But the line just continuing to trudge along here. Moving now, starting to exit Muscle Shoals, the Florence area. So if you're up there in Killen, probably seeing the worst of it right now. And when this line moves on top of you, there's a window where it's going to get worse before it gets better. And then you'll start to see that rain tapering off, and that's how you know. And then just to point out, we do have this kind of secondary line coming in behind it. That is not severe, but obviously watching just because that's what we're tracking here on the radar. Rogersville heads up, Coxey coming your way, Anderson. Anyone there reporting that they have actually lost power or maybe some flickering power?
A lot of flickering in Cortland right now, getting reports of that. Power out in Bear Creek and Phil Campbell. That's from Kara. And this is all updates on our Facebook page. And again, I'm trying to keep up with the comments on Facebook as much as I possibly can. And I can't thank you enough because it's those reports letting us know that you've lost power, that it's verifying that these winds are strong and they are causing damage. It doesn't have to be a tornado to cause damage today. These are going to be some damaging winds, and that's why there's a severe thunderstorm warning currently out for pretty much the entire northwest and western portions of Alabama.
And that goes for 2 more minutes, Jeff. It's 1 more minute now, 10:29. This severe thunderstorm warning right here, if we, no, that's the lightning tool. I can just use this here, and it lets you know that severe thunderstorm warning goes until 10:30. Now, usually at this point now, they would have said if they're going to extend that warning, and I haven't seen anything mentioned about it yet. We go off to the south too, and they still have this large polygon, and look at this line. How far south it goes, and that's all getting picked up from the Columbus radar. So that, I mean, we're looking very far down the line, but just the fact that these polygons are so large because this is moving around 60 miles per hour, that they're trying to just give you as much heads up as possible. There is our new severe thunderstorm warning
just
coming.
added it. Getting reports of trees down, trees and power lines down in Franklin County as the line passes through.
Okay, well, we're probably going to go into continuous coverage then, just because the reports are starting to verify too. So,
and that's the thing with this particular line. You know, you focus and everyone says, you know, tornado warnings. Am I getting a tornado? It's not all about that today. You know, obviously the tornado is priority, and we want you to be safe. But it's the
Well, good morning once again, everyone. Tracking a line of severe storms continuing to move from west to east across parts of North Alabama. No active warnings for you in Middle Tennessee. Severe thunderstorm warning has been extended now. I believe this one is a new severe thunderstorm warning. Yeah, that goes until 11:30. And part of the reason it is such a long warning over the course of the next hour here is because of how fast this line of rain and wind is coming your way. No hail reports coming out of this. However, if we go down into Franklin County right here, we are getting reports of some trees coming down. Now, we never know when these reports come in exactly how big are these trees coming down, but enough for them to say lots of reports. The history of damage with this is why this wind this wind threat is becoming so concerning. So if you are in Florence, Muscle Shoals, and even the Killen area, the greatest wind threat behind you now, we'll likely start to see some reports of power outages coming in. If you happen to lose power at any point, know that we are streaming on both YouTube and on Facebook. But now that we are getting reports of confirmed damage coming along with this, if you're up in the Lexington area, a lot of wind coming your way, probably 60 miles per hour. And with the amount of heavy rainfall we've seen over the past several days, we've got muddy, soggy conditions, so it's going to make it a little bit more easy for these trees to come down. Right now, we're going to go down new tornado watch, I think, coming out. That would be for parts of northeast Alabama. We do have a tornado watch for most of our counties now until 1 o'clock. And we are watching for areas of rotation, but this is really turning out, as of right now, to be just a significant straight line wind event. If you're in Town Creek, heads up, this is coming your way here. I'm going to zoom out right now and put on an extended storm track for this. At last check, this is, moving about 60 miles per hour. So as we put on that storm track, and this is where the area of more unstable air is too. So if this is as strong as it is right now and reporting damage areas west of this line that already moved through, I will say your severe weather threat here is likely over. Watching a little bit of development on the back side of that, but we're going to go here and put on one of those storm tracks just to let you know when we are expecting this line of wind to move into your area. We'll do 63 miles per hour there. Just step out of the way so you could easily see this. The Town Creek area, I gave you a heads up just a moment ago, 1037. Hatton 1039. We go out to Rogersville at 1041. Lester 1044. Coxey 1047. Moulton 1048. Bethel 1049 and Speak 1055, Trinity area 1056, and Elkmont too. So we've got a line of damaging wind right now moving across the viewing area. It's tracking kind of northeasterly, and look how far south this line of severe wind goes, all the way down into parts of central Alabama. The Weather Service in Birmingham coordinating that, but we've got reports coming in out into Franklin County, a couple reports in Colbert County that trees are coming down. We don't necessarily know what size these trees are, but that doesn't matter. That should be concerning enough. If maybe you are in a more questionable shelter, that at the very least, I want you, if you're near this, to be away from your window. So Anderson out to Cortland here, all coming your way. You've got Moulton here. We'll zoom in to parts of northwest Lawrence County, Old Bethel, Hatton, up to Town Creek, and Leeton. This is right on top of you. So some of you might be losing power as we go. Here's Highway 20. There's downtown Leeton. You've got Cottontown Lane. Here's Town Creek. You're right on the cusp of this, and this is surging your way. And we'll just kind of work our way south here out to the Hatton area. You've got Old Bethel continuing to try and give you a closer street level look at this. You got Wolf Springs. There's Hatton, and then Mount Moriah, and then eventually out to the Moulton area. And then farther off to the south into parts of southwest Lawrence County. This is coming out of Phil Campbell now. With this, Jeff, moving through parts of Russellville, Phil Campbell, and also the Quad Cities up there in Lauderdale and Colbert County, I think we're going to have a much better idea of exactly how many people are starting to lose power. Just trying to check the Weather Service chat. All right, so we've got a new tornado watch for DeKalb, Jackson, and Marshall. A tornado watch, and that goes until 4 o'clock. I think we'll be out of that watch well before 4 p.m. this afternoon, but the more imminent threat right now will be straight line winds, not necessarily rotating winds, but straight line winds. And here's Highway 72 up there, Rogersville, Lexington, Anderson, and Coxey. Anything coming out of the other chat rooms, Jeff, as far as reports, or what are people saying as far as the comments go? There's Lexington and out to Rogersville, down to Town Creek. Town Creek heads up, coming your way. Initially, we had a tornado warning out into parts of Mississippi. There was an area of rotation that weekend well before it even moved into parts of Franklin County, but now focusing on the more concerning and imminent threat of just straight line winds coming through, moving very fast, and this will blow through in probably 10 to 15 minutes. You'll get torrential rain. You'll get that surge of immediate wind coming out of this. But we're watching the line, obviously, for areas of rotation, but we're not really seeing it, although this little feature right here, east northeast of you in Russellville, will have to be watched. But notice they're also starting to trim down the backside of that severe thunderstorm warning, and then up toward Waterloo there. Again, that is not severe. But out to Anderson here, coming your way. Oh, yeah, that's actually, I think, a repeat report there. We're talking about the damage coming out of Russellville. That was originally reported by EMA here. Mount Rousel, Lester, Coxey, you guys are next to see this blast of wind. I guess that's the most technical term I could throw your way. And then you've got Town Creek here, Cortland, Hatton, Old Bethel, Leeton. This is right on top of you. I'm going to check the hail product here, but really that's not our primary concern with this. Maybe some hail. Could use our dropper tool up there. That is sub-severe hail. Severe hail being 3/4 inch, 1 inch diameter, excuse me. And then we're going to continue to get a better look at this as we change radar sites eventually and start using the high top radar out there in Jackson County. But at the moment, tracking a line of severe wind gusts. This has a history of producing damage out into parts of Franklin County, Colbert County, and Lauderdale County. We've had reports of 53-mile-per-hour wind gusts up there toward Wilson Dam, and it's moving very fast, moving into a more favorable environment as well. So this is certainly something that we are watching. We want to let you know. We'll probably have some reports of power outages. And one of the things that I want to point out that Jeff and I were talking about earlier this morning, if you lose power, plan on probably being without power for a good chunk of the day, because after the severe wind threat moves through, we've got the high wind warning through 6 p.m. So there'll be gusty winds. Even though it's not raining, we'll have wind gusts maybe up to 60 miles per hour. Our hardworking utility companies, the linemen and women doing what they do, they're not going to be going up in their buckets when there's 50 and 60 mile per hour gradient winds around too. So that's another thing that we've been stressing, that this is going to be a high impact wind event, kind of a 1-2 punch, if you will, as we're dealing with not only the severe gusts of wind at the moment, but then we've got kind of the gradient continuous winds, 30 to 40 miles per hour, and also gusting 50 to 60 from time to time. Jeff?
Yeah, can you pull up the weather computer on 2 for me, just so I can show this real quick? Seems to be a lot of confusion on the Facebook Live about where the tornado watch is. Okay, it originally was issued for see that little red line? So areas west of that red line, it was issued until 1 p.m. A new tornado watch. Remember, a watch means that the ingredients are there for the potential for a tornado. It doesn't mean there's one happening. That would have to be a warning. The areas to the right of that red line, that has now been issued until 4 p.m. Now, we are all now in a tornado watch. It expires at different times, but so far we don't have a tornado warning for the area. It's just a watch right now. And keep in mind, this line moving so quickly, if you are west of the line, you have some wind still, but that tornado threat for you in like western Franklin and western Lauderdale has pretty much come to an end. You have to be preceding the line. What I mean by that is the area ahead of where this line is moving to, and that is the area where we're going to be tracking the potential for a few spin-ups right in this area right in here. So you got to be ahead of the front. If you are back here behind it, you still have some strong winds, but the real threat for a spin-up tornado along this line is pretty much ended for you. And now it's just a matter of bracing for those high winds behind the line itself. Remember, this is going to be a wind event regardless of how strong those storms are as they move over your area. You can be way ahead of this line and you're already getting winds gusting up 40, 50 miles an hour, and we're getting reports of some damage with trees. Also, many of you along 65 now in the Decatur area talking about how you're having your power flicker and you're already seeing the winds pick up, but I have no rain. That's because the line is still well west of you. It hasn't quite reached you yet, just the wind so far.
All right, Jeff, appreciate it. Again, team coverage here, watching a line of severe wind. We are watching for areas of potential rotation with this. This appears at the moment to be more of a straight line wind threat, a more immediate straight line wind threat, but that doesn't mean we're still not watching for potential spin-ups here. It looks like we could potentially have an area of rotation, maybe south and southwest of you in the Hatton area. So just watching that. The problem with the storm reports with this, they'll probably all get dumped on us very quickly here, all at the same time, and we'll know exactly what we're dealing with. But this has a history of putting down trees and power poles, especially. So here's Coxie. You've got 72 right now. A lot of people probably hopefully not out on the roadways. I know a lot of the schools were doing virtual learning. Out here to Rogersville, Anderson right now, Mount Roswell, and you've got Lester here. We've got Muscle Shoals Airport, so Northwest Alabama Regional. That was a 51 mile per hour wind gust, and that was at 1027. So that would have been as the line did move through Muscle Shoals there. Now notice you're also probably drawing out here. So that's a couple reports coming out of parts of both Lauderdale and Colbert County there that have been close to 50 miles per hour. And we'll be watching that area right there. Again, I pointed that out initially from Old Bethel out to Hatton here, potentially seeing that area of rotation too. So watching the line, see if we could maybe get a better look. I doubt it. Coming off the high top radar right now, yeah, it doesn't look as good as what we're still going to use the Columbus radar to give us the best look at this. But if you are in this polygon, it is a large severe thunderstorm polygon, and the Weather Service said right out of the gate, they said this is going to be how we're going to issue warnings. Big polygons out for an hour at a time. They'll be watching the tornado threat as well as the straight line wind threat. We are hardly seeing any lightning with this too, which is very interesting because typically we see that.
Getting also a report, Eric, just real quick, our caller said that there's a large tree. It's near the Aquadome in Decatur, blocking some traffic. So
okay, I mean, that's well out ahead of it too.
Yeah. Yep.
That's coming. So again, those are the normal gradient winds. Okay, right now, Anderson to Rogersville. Here's Coxie. This is 72. This area is starting to show some rotation here. See if it shows up with the shear rate tool. So in between Anderson and Rogersville, we could potentially see a quick spin up developing here. That's almost going back to the radar signature. I'll show you. Sometimes we talk about kind of that bookend vortex potentially. That would be developing right in that area here. So we'll go to kind of that storm relative velocity view, and then I'm going to put a quick storm track on this. Again, with these happening and moving so quickly, it's going to be hard to put accurate storm tracks on these just because it's moving at 60 miles per hour. So I have to pull back the view quite a bit here, but we'll put this on. This is the area right here between Anderson there and then moving this way. So just to show you some of the towns that the Coxie area, here's Anderson, again moving in a kind of a east to northeasterly fashion. You've got Athens here, but that's an area of potential rotation. Now farther south, of course, you have that surge of wind coming your way that has produced damage too. So now we're starting to move into parts of Limestone County. Eventually this will start to move into parts of Morgan County and eventually Coleman County too. We are watching this line of wind come through. Some of you possibly losing power, although we'd probably start hearing about quite a bit of it now, especially moving through the more populated areas of northwest Alabama. But I want to go back to that. Doesn't look as good as it did with the previous scan. And then now we'll kind of go down to the tail end of this out here. It would be right here. So we could actually use that. That BTI, that Barron Tornado Index product that we tend to use frequently during our severe weather coverage. Not so much of a hail threat with this. Look at the speed that this line is moving. Now that's not the guesstimate of wind speed, that's the actual how fast is that little part of the line moving right there, northeast at 76 miles per hour. But when we see that BTI, probably about 4.5 to 5, we start to have a little bit more of a threat of seeing a quick tornado developing here. We have that severe thunderstorm warning that goes until 11:30. Going back in here, we'll kind of take a look. This is east of Phil Campbell, so we're now into parts of southern Lawrence County here in this area, and we'll get that road for you. Heading south from Moulton down to the Grayson area, and really that's Alabama Highway 33 there. So watching a few areas, no real tight rotation. We've got the one up here, but when we start to see these breaks, we always stress that when we see these breaks, we'll have to continue to monitor that. So if you're in Town Creek and Cortland potentially right now, that's worth watching. And then also you've got Anderson to Rogersville here. Jeff, anything new?
Yeah, that area from Anderson to Rogersville, that's affecting like areas like County Road 25, Snake Road, County Road 50 to the Cherry Grove area. And that would be the area of concern where you're seeing that between Anderson and Rogersville right now, where we're watching the potential for some rotation there.
Yeah, and using our tool here, 40, 50 mile per hour winds, but that's on the storm relative side of things too. So tracking northeasterly, this will move toward the Mount Roswell area and eventually toward Leicester. I'm going to put a quick track on that just to show you where it's heading. We'll probably have to include more of a northeasterly component to this. So this will be in the Leicester area, 1058, Minor Hill, 1102, out to Pulaski there, 1117. I know that's not necessarily our television viewing area, but we often see so many of you people joining our streams. We are on both YouTube right now. We're on Facebook Live, and you can catch us right there on your 48 weather app. And that's important to know, especially if we potentially you lose power at home. So right now in the Anderson area, I think that's probably the worst part of the line is up there right now in Anderson, out to between Mount Roswell here. Here's Alabama Highway 99, and that goes there. And then there's Highway 207, and then you've got the Leicester community. I would say out of the entire segment right now, that's probably the most concerning area coming out of Anderson. You've got County Road 95 there. There's the new scan, still seeing that very bright pink color, now heading closer to you. And you'll see this over and over again with each new scan, how far this actually moves on the screen, because this, again, this line of storms is moving about 60 to 65 miles per hour. And that's where we're starting to see a little bit more of that rotation too. But I want to go back down to parts of Lawrence County there, the east of you in Phil Campbell. Yeah, nothing too special there. Looking at our radar, big picture here, we're going to put another storm track on this just to give you guys downstream as much warning as we can associated with this. So we'll say moving at 60 miles per hour, and we'll let you know when we can start to see this, because it's going to start to move into the very populated areas. We're going to see it move through Athens. We'll see it move through downtown Decatur. You're not in the warning at the moment, but this is all heading your way. This is a line of damaging wind. And I say damaging because it has a history of producing damage. So this is the timeline here. You've got Speak 1058, the Bethel community will be 1059, Trinity 1103, Elkmont 1105, eventually Decatur and Athens 1108 and 1109. It is 1050 right now on your Friday morning. First Alert Weather Day continues and it will continue even after the severe threat is over for these high winds we're dealing with. Jeff, anything new?
Yeah, checking power outages right now too, and the number is starting to really escalate, especially in Franklin County, where nearly 50% of the county is now reporting power outages. Alabama Power, 10,000 customers without power now, and starting to see some power outages reported in Marion County, and I'm sure those numbers will continue to go up. And Eric brought up a good point. You know, you have this line of thunderstorms that's racing through the area, you lose power, and behind the line you have this incredibly strong gusty winds behind the actual line itself. It's going to make it very difficult to restore power right away. So once you lose power, it's going to take a little while to get you back up and running, and a lot of patience needed to be provided by the afternoon hours when you still are out of power, maybe an hour or two from now. It could be a while. These strong gusty winds behind the line are going to continue. I mean, the high wind warning goes until, what, 6 p.m. So there's a long duration of strong winds even after this line of thunderstorms moves to the east.
Okay, so now if we're going to focus on parts of Limestone County, here is Athens, starting to see some rain showers coming out of this. And then this is that line of wind heading your way. Now we go down farther to the south. We're just trying to give you guys a heads up. If you're in Decatur, Hartselle, now we're talking Highway 31 all the way down to Coleman. You've got 65 there. We're just trying to let you know in advance that this is coming. Jeff, I did turn all of our cameras. That's behind the chat there on the leftmost computer. They are facing to the south, so maybe eventually from our Decatur camera, we'll be able to see. We might have the shelf cloud feature coming with this, with that leading edge there. Tree down on County Road 87 near the Lawrence-Morgan County line. Okay, and that's going to be out in front of this here. So those are just the general winds ahead of this. And I do want to point out that we kind of had that secondary feature that was not severe. Even that seems to be dissipating, but your severe weather threat may be over here in Florence, Sheffield, Tuscumbia, but you'll still see some of those gradient winds coming in behind it, 40 to 50 miles per hour. Let's go back out into parts of Limestone County. You've got Coxsey there. Here's 72. There's Athens, Elkmont, Bethel, Lester, Mount Roswell. That's where that area of rotation that doesn't look as worrying as it did a moment ago. That would be between Lester and Minor Hill, now crossing over the state line, looking at that shear rate. Yeah, it's right there, but that's fairly broad rotation. I think now that you're reporting those power outages, Jeff, in the thousands. Yeah. This obviously the straight line wind threat. Given the widespread damage, any new severe thunderstorm warnings will have winds bumped up to 70 miles per hour. So this initial warning, well, this is actually the second warning coming out of this morning. Now we'll have 70 mile per hour threat just because of the reports that they've seen out into parts of Franklin, Colbert, and Lauderdale County. All right, we're going to go down toward Moulton now, out to Cortland, and you've got Trinity, Decatur here, and eventually up toward you in Tanner, and we got Speake. There's Alabama Highway 157 between Speake and Moulton. This is the wind. Moulton right now, your power may be flickering. It may have even gone out, and you've lost our coverage on the television. But you could always find us with the stream too. So we'll go back and we'll put another storm track on this. This one might be a little more concentrated here, not the long one that includes just about everyone, but here you go. Now we're even looking at within the hour here, moving toward Madison County, parts of Morgan County, trees and power lines at Elk River Mills and Hickory Hills in the Sportsman Park side. I'm not exactly sure where that's at, but that might mean something to you guys at home. So here's your early heads up. If you're in Morgan County and Limestone County, this is coming your way. You might potentially lose power now, so maybe as a last-ditch effort away from windows, I would say this wind might be enough to potentially warrant you going to at least an interior room away from windows. I wouldn't say maybe safe spot, although with the wording of the warnings up to potentially 70 miles per hour, you do what makes you comfortable. And if we see anything very concerning, obviously we'll tell you to immediately get to your safe spot. Cortland here, Moulton, out to Trinity. It's coming, and if you're in the Decatur area, This is just about on top of you, moving northeast about 60 to 65 miles per hour, a line of severe wind that has a history of producing damage. I know Tennessee Valley Living starts here at 11 o'clock in 5 minutes, but with the active warnings and just because this has a history of producing damage, we're likely going to continue our coverage here. Jeff, something new?
Yeah, a tree down over by County Road 87 where the Lawrence-Morgan County line is. That would be put you right near the Moulton area. Numerous reports of tree damage as we continue to track this line of storms. And again, it's a very narrow line now making it to I-65. So anywhere from Athens down to Decatur, this is where you're already starting to get into some rain now, and you're also going to start picking up on those winds intensifying even a bit more. And kind of zoom in a bit, not much in the way of any kind of rotation within the line itself at this time, but you're starting to see the winds pick up in Hartselle. And if you're on 65, especially driving like Decatur down towards Coleman, areas towards Somerville, getting into some stronger winds now. Many of you saying that the power has been flickering in the Somerville area. ARAB getting reports from you online talking about how the winds have picked up there as well, and even extending into the Huntsville area now, and even crossing over to areas like in Jackson County. Some of you now, when you cross over to that Jackson County, Scottsboro, Gurley area, picking up on some strong winds as well. And that's all preceding this line. And you don't have to be in the red and yellow to be having an effect with this. And that's the big point we tried to make this morning, was preceding and behind the line itself is a big time wind event. Within the line itself is the chance to have a few spin up tornadoes. So far, it's been mainly just a wind and rain event, but we are tracking it very closely and continue to keep an eye on it as it continues to move east across the Tennessee Valley. Eric?
Yeah, the new wording on the warnings now, Jeff, will have a mention of considerable damage. Just the power outage numbers that he went over in the 10,000 plus range, that shows you that this entire line is really packing a significant punch. Wind gusts potentially up to 70 miles per hour. We could start using the high top radar. That actually might give us we're kind of in that in-between area here. We'll put a storm track on this, let you know what's coming your way. And now notice that they're even, the Weather Service in Nashville is starting to warn the northern part of that storm. We haven't seen severe thunderstorm warnings up here in Middle Tennessee yet, so that includes you now not quite in the warning yet up in Lincoln County, Fayetteville there, but given I'm guessing a lot of their judgment on that, Jeff, probably just came from the amount of reports we have coming in. There is your timeline. If you're in the Lester community, this is on top of you. Same with you in Coxie, and we'll go street level there in 1 second. I just want to give everyone downstream of this a little bit of a heads up. Trinity there, 11:06. Athens, 11:10. And we're coming up on the 11 o'clock hour and out toward Decatur there at 11:12. Taking it down. You've got Anderson, the rain probably starting to let up a little bit. Mount Rosal, Lester, up to Bethel, a little hiccup, out to Athens, and then Coxie there. That's basically the next surge of wind coming your way is right up there in parts of far northern Limestone County, not northern Limestone County, excuse me, right along Highway 72, a very populated road, a very trafficked road, especially with some of the larger vehicles. Think it is a bad day to be a truck driver, given the amount of wind we're dealing with. On top of that, you've probably got sheets of rain, and we could go to our hail tool here. And talking about a threat of maybe some 1-inch diameter hail. That, of course, is severe hail. But power outages reported. We've got reports of trees coming down. This is starting to move into a very, very populated area here as we continue to track this line of severe wind, now moving into parts of Morgan County and Limestone County. Athens, you've only got a few minutes. If you're down there in Trinity, out to Decatur. Again, Jeff, we've got the Decatur camera facing off to the west there. We've got now some of these reports coming in are now trees that are falling over roadways. That is obviously a concern too, not only for traffic impacts, but just the fact that people could be driving around and these trees are starting to come down too. If you're in Speak right now, the strongest wind probably coming right your way. You've got Oakville and Kitchens Mill, and then eventually you go out to the Oak Ridge community. Again, that's moving out of Lawrence County and eventually crossing over into parts of Morgan County. And if you know anyone that's on I-65 right now, if they're heading south and they look out the right side of their vehicle off to the west, that's what they're looking at. Probably just very dark, Not a ton of lightning with this, and we usually, well, that's starting to really uptick. I take that back through the Moulton area, probably very noisy, heavy rain. You've got frequent thunder and lightning, and on top of that, you've got these winds that are really starting to pick up here, and that's missing you. Well, not the lightning or the wind here, but it's just the more concentrated lightning is what I was getting at, is north and northwest of you in the Speak area. But Limestone County, get ready now. This is entering and it's coming your way. So if you're in Athens, know someone there. Trinity, Decatur, also downstream. This is something to consider. I know you're in Madison County right now. We said the severe threat would go by very fast, but it's a potent severe threat with this. This is all coming into parts of Madison County. Eventually, if you're in parts of eastern Morgan County, Coleman County, notice the orientation there from northeast off to the southwest. That's all coming your way, and eventually into northeast Alabama. And if you're just joining us, you have been added to that tornado watch. That tornado watch goes until 1 o'clock. But based on the trends of what we saw out in Mississippi, that watch will start to be shaved very, very quickly here. Jeff?
Yeah, Eric, I think we can kind of, in a boxer's term, it's kind of like a sucker punch, right? They're going to punch you and then it's going to run away. And that's what this line does, is it packs a punch and then it moves on so quickly. Many of you in the Shoals area, I got sunshine now, but you still have some strong gusty winds. Don't let it fool you that you're still not going to have some wind damage behind this line, even if you pop a little sunshine. And keep in mind too, 65 is a north-south running highway, right? So what happens when these storms, as they move into your area and then they move on the way, you turn your winds back to the west. So what happens on a north-south facing highway? If you are an 18-wheeler and you've pulled over and parked, now you got these winds coming in from the west. That's crossing over where your 18-wheeler is. It's not coming in from behind, so it's a crosswind for that highway, and that could be very dangerous for high-profile vehicles as we go into the afternoon. Once that line of storms moves to the east, that's another concern we have, because you do turn those winds to the west, and that could be a problem on 65 into the afternoon.
Yeah, I want to show you something that's happening that I'm seeing, not only the uptick in lightning, but now we start to see maybe that line starting to push out a little bit. We call that almost a bow echo feature, and that would be a very, I mean, this whole line from north to south is producing significant damaging wind, but I'd say the more concentrated area right now would likely be right here from Moulton to Speak, and then heading in that northeasterly direction. We could actually put a quick storm track on it. There you go. We've got Speak at 11:05, Trinity 11:15. This is probably the strongest part of the storm here. Not that to the north it's not severe, but I'd say the more concerning area, that BTI of 3.9, hail size at ½ an inch, predicted at ½ an inch. But just generally looking at the uptick in the lightning here, we do have this active severe thunderstorm warning. These are for wind gusts potentially up to 70 miles per hour, and the mention of 1-inch hail. Now you go toward Trinity and Decatur, taking this kind of down to a street view there, Trinity and Decatur. That's where this next surge of wind is coming our way. Right there along, there's Highway 20. You've got Alabama Highway 24 here. Quite a bit of lightning. This is going to be very noisy as it moves through your area. Make sure you're avoiding windows now. But this is going to start to move right over the Decatur metro area and eventually then head off into parts of far western Madison County. Out toward the Moulton area, you're going to see an end here. But look at the lightning concentration there too. And there's Speak. So moving into now Morgan County and Limestone County. Any update on the number of power outages, Jeff, if you want to look into that? And then also potentially watching this break in the line that we have here. Not showing up anything overly concerning there, but when we see those line breaks, that's sometimes where we do get a threat of a quick spin up. That's moving into parts of Athens, Limestone County there. There's Highway 72 for reference, and this is just moving incredibly fast. It's just going to hit you all at once. Big gust of wind, 60 to 70 miles per hour. And moving into Decatur, Hartsville, Priceville area, this section of I-65, and then eventually that path from Moulton there to the northeast, which is the direction of this line, is going to go right up that Interstate 565 corridor like we were tracking on Wednesday evening. But right now, Athens, that will also, being a more populated area, the storm reports coming out of this will be probably power outages and numerous trees down too. And we've got a history of damage out into Franklin, Colbert, and Lauderdale County. And that's why the reason we are keeping this with continuous coverage. This is a high impact wind event. Tornado watch in effect for through 1 o'clock. We've got a new watch out here till 4 o'clock. But given just the speed of this moving from west to east, I think will be dropped from that watch. Now, your severe weather threat is over here in the western counties, but please, we've got reports of power lines down and power outages, so there could be some live wires here in our western counties, also some trees over area roadways, so be cautious about that. And then we've got the normal winds, maybe up to 60 miles per hour. Jeff, anything new?
Yeah, Franklin and Marion County seem to have the highest number of power outages right now, over 1,000, 2,000 in portions of Franklin County and up to over 4,000 in Marion County. But as the line continued to move east, we're getting more and more in the way of reports of power outages now in Lawrence County and also into portions of Winston County. So this has a history of knocking out power. It has a history of taking trees down, and it's producing winds gusting up to 50, 60 miles an hour within the line itself. But preceding the line is where you're getting some of those strong winds out ahead of it. So if you could take the graphics, thank you so much, on 2, you can see now a big impact all along 65. And let me zoom out a little bit more because it's affecting areas to the north now. So if you live in Pulaski or you live in Fayetteville, this is headed your way. And areas like in Fayetteville, the storm's not quite on top of you. It's to our west. But what happens is you're already getting those strong gusty winds, heavy rainfall, vivid lightning. And Eric and I were talking this morning about how we didn't have a lot of instability this morning. It was mainly just essentially low end instability, but a lot of shear with this, okay? The way this plays out, though, as the line moves east, it's encountering some of that just slightly higher instability along 65, getting tremendous amounts of lightning now showing up in and around areas just to the west of 65. So this is affecting like Speake and Hartselle and Decatur and areas just south of Tanner, and that's where we're seeing it encounter some of that more unstable air, Eric.
Yeah, so this is the big setup here, what we're dealing with. We're going to stay with this now because we've got a history of damage. I believe we had one minor injury out into parts of Franklin County here. Severe thunderstorm warning continues. The worst part of this line is right here now, exiting parts of Lawrence County, moving into Morgan County, and this is probably going to have a significant impact on you in Decatur, kind of on the northern side of things, up into Limestone County, Athens. You're going to see that surge of wind. But looking out now, if you're in Trinity, look at the concentration of lightning. Numerous cloud to ground strikes, and that's why we tell you to avoid the windows in your home. Make sure you're in an interior room. We could potentially be seeing winds 60 to 70 miles per hour in this, just rushing through. So if you are in Trinity right now, the rain will be pounding the roof of your home. You might have some hail. It might not necessarily be severe hail, but it's there. And this is all coming in just a matter of minutes to you in Decatur, and we'll have a good idea of exactly what's happening because of how many people live there. You go out into Priceville, Hartselle, right along I-65. Going back to this morning's newscast, the timeline is actually pretty spot on with this, so no one should really be caught off guard that this is happening. And then we go down towards Speake. You're seeing the worst of it at the moment, but more concerning is this northeasterly track of the line up toward Trinity and eventually moving into Decatur. I'm going to go ahead and put a storm track on that for you and carry that storm track all the way over into parts of Madison, maybe even Jackson County, because again, this line is moving at about 60 miles per hour. We've got our camera there. That is, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff, that is Decatur, right?
It is.
Okay, so there we go. Here's your storm track, Decatur 1112. That gives you about 4 minutes. We're talking interior room away from windows. A big surge of wind coming your way. Torrential rainfall coming your way. If you're in the Priceville area, 1122. Capshaw 1124. This severe thunderstorm warning, the polygon here, they're probably going to have to extend that here in a second, but the wording on that is considerable damage. We've got confirmed reports. That is one of the benefits, I guess, of having the severe weather roll through during normal business hours here and in the daylight too. That's very important to stress that things are often reported to us and we get that ground truth a lot faster than those late night events like we had on Wednesday evening. We've got Chief Meteorologist Brad Travis. He is joining us in the studio, and he's getting mic'd up, and he'll chime in with any information here. You've got Old Moton Road. You've got Wolftown. There's Kitchens Mill. and the Basham community, Flint City, and here is Decatur City proper right there. And then obviously you got the bridge over the river. This is going to be probably the most significant part of this line of storms right now, moving into Morgan County. If you're up there in Athens, probably saying, well, why is he not talking about us? The line doesn't look as organized up there. You're still dealing with a lot of wind, potentially severe wind, but I just want to focus on the Decatur area and moving into parts of Morgan County. Now, if you are in Speake, in probably 5 to 10 minutes, the rain will move out. You still have cloud to ground lightning to deal with, even as it tracks farther to the east, to know that about 10 miles outside of this parent line of storms, if you will, you could still be dealing with lightning. If you're in Moulton right now, you are okay, but know that behind this, we could see some significant non-storm related winds. Here's the county line between Lawrence and Morgan County, and now we'll go right into Decatur. If you see anything of note, even just the frequent lightning showing up on the Decatur cam, feel free to just give me a shout here. But right here into Decatur, and we'll just continue to take it down to kind of that street view. If you're in Trinity, I bet you it is just absolutely howling where you're at. Again, north of Decatur, here's Highway 20, Trinity. In a couple minutes, this will all be off to your east. Your severe weather threat will be over. I know they were mentioning on the chat that they're going to start shaving those counties from west to east from that tornado watch and the lightning. We were saying earlier in the coverage, we were kind of surprised that there was such little lightning frequency. Well, that's starting to change here, but at the same time, and when discussing what the system was going to do, we've got a new severe thunderstorm warning here. Do you have the time on that? That goes until 11:30 as well. Yep. So that's an extension there. As this crosses over I-65, we're potentially getting into the juicier, more unstable air too. And notice how that polygon now is really factoring in that northeasterly movement as opposed to the earlier severe thunderstorm warnings that were oriented more west to east. Now that's way up there to northeast. So we're now talking about parts, if you're in Madison, this is coming your way here in a few minutes out to the Greenbrier community. Here's Interstate 565, and there's the intersection with 65 north and south. Decatur probably getting hit hard at the moment. Jeff, anything new?
Yeah, just a history of the storms, starting to get those reports in. This is from EMA Director Mary Glass. Reports of trees down, blown transformers, power lines down all over the county. This is Franklin County. And with the power outage numbers now up to almost 2,200, that represents nearly 40% of the county now without power. And some of the worst damage being reported by County Road 624 and along Highway 43, which is right near the Russellville area. And that was when the line moved through. It was about an hour ago, and now that line has shifted east towards 65. So we have ground truth of what's happened with what we've been talking about all morning long is the damaging winds, the heavy rainfall, and it didn't have to be a tornado producing damage. It was these winds preceding the line and behind the line, and then when the line moved through, that has caused extensive damage for areas to the west. Also some reports of some trees and power lines down on Highway 72 in Cherokee and Tuscumbia right now. Carter Drive, there was a tree down, and so we're seeing these reports coming in now. We figured they would come in as the line continued to move east.
Yeah, so I'm still watching for areas of rotation. Everything that I've seen so far on the radar data, I think has been more indicative of straight line wind. Notice the lightning uptick too. Sometimes that's the tool we use for intensification. I'm going to turn it off for just a second, but we'll take it right down here to Decatur. There's 6th Avenue. There's the belt line. Again, this is very concentrated, populated area. Also going to continue to monitor the shear tool here, and this is the area potentially that's actually the most rotation we've seen.
We need to watch that.
Yeah, that's probably if it starts tightening up, more concerning here. But here's Decatur. That would be right in between Priceville there, and there's Alabama Highway 31 there. We'll see what the BTI is potentially if it's.
That's going to be approaching the south side of Decatur, the south side of the belt line. I would be taking at least minor tornado precautions. I'd get in the hallway there. That's going to be the Burning Tree subdivision area, going to be towards Point Mallard, and that's going to be tracking right across the Tennessee River Bridge, and eventually that takes it south of Mooresville to the Redstone Arsenal and pretty much paralleling I-565.
and seeing that.
Yeah, now it's even getting more intense. So it's possible we have that comma head, that Boeing segment in the beginning of that line, which is also the area we're watching quite a bit for the intense lightning that you've been mentioning, Eric.
Yeah, here's Flint City. Like Brad said, minor tornado precautions. Look at just the camera on the side of your screen there, and that camera's blowing around. Torrential rain and just trying to. It's even hard to get a reference point on that camera, but that's a live look right now on that camera on your screen from Decatur. Right as you cross over the bridge, you could look at the marina, that marina receiving damage here, but this is the area that we really have to watch. Jeff, I did lose the chat on my screen, but especially now seeing that too, just moving into the Decatur area. Between the Beltline, there's Danville. That's that area of rotation that we're watching. No active tornado warning on this, but you know we've been talking about how this is kind of that spin up. You've got the line moving very quickly, and you know how fast these spin ups happen, like we had the other evening out there in parts of northern Madison County. So an area we're watching of rotation. This is very close to Decatur, that concentrated area right there, and that's tracking off to the north and east. Here's Greenbrier. That's potentially going to head right toward the Madison area. This is going to cross over the river and go right up I-565. So the most concerning part of the storm, we've got the camera still up there giving you the look there at what's happening outside. The worst part of this storm is going to go right through some of our more populated areas. Down to Speak, kind of on the tail edge of this thing. If you're in Hartselle and also out to Falkville here, I can put a storm track on this, but it's probably best to just say, hey, in about 5 minutes, this is coming your way. This is knocking on your door off to the west. This is all crossing over I-65. I know we have Zach in the back. He's watching the Algo cameras to see if we have anything. And then also up farther north, you could still see some very strong wind. I'm not forgetting about you here in Madison County. You out to the Harvest, Monrovia area. Here's 53 up to the Ardmore area. It just doesn't look, there's a lot of heavy rain with that, maybe some small hail. But this part of the storm right now, basically just west of you in Priceville along 31 out to Decatur, crossing over the Tennessee River and now moving into Madison County. This is coming, and it is coming fast too. Okay, yep, we've got a picture of the Tennessee River Bridge coming your way in a second.
Yeah, Eric, I got a couple of updates too, if you don't mind. A couple of reports of some power lines down in Town Creek intersection, County Road 160, Highway 101, tree down on power line. That's in Town Creek, and also a tree down on a residence in Spring Street in Moulton. Power lines and power poles are down the 2000 block County Road of 241. That's near mile marker 18 and Alabama Highway 33. So just some damage reports to go along with the live looks that we have here across the area showing the winds and rain.
Sorry, just trying to log back into chat here. There's the timeline. This is all coming your way. We showed you the camera indicator. I'm going to take the timeline off, and we're going to go right down to Decatur and then out to the Greenbrier area, right along 565. We've got the Space and Rocket Center camera, though we're probably just looking at a wall of rain and wind coming your way. Marshall Space Flight Center. That is Highway 31 and Highway 20. That's going over the bridge. If we could get that back up, potentially. If not, I just wanted to show you how the sheets of rain, you could see that when we just had that camera up, even for a brief second. That's really all we needed to see is how much wind is coming in. Here's Priceville, Decatur one more time, out to Triana, tracking northeast. Brad, anything radar scope?
Yeah, we've got 108 mile an hour winds just above the ground moving into Priceville. So again, we're looking at Decatur over here. I'm going to switch this up just a bit so you can kind of see the reflectivity. But what we're looking at down here, again, this is elevated, but the radar is picking up winds at about 108 miles per hour south of in around Hartselle, moving towards Priceville, and that's the area where we're starting to watch this area very closely as far as where the storm is bowing out some. And I want to talk briefly about, we're getting a lot of reports of trees down, and it's possible that as some of these trees start falling, especially as the winds intensify a bit more, that the root system in those trees is going to lead to gas lines and the water lines coming out of the ground, and so we could have some ruptured gas lines. And I mentioned earlier on Facebook Live what we're looking at. The power is going to go out, and it may be a while before the power gets turned back on, because they don't want those the crews out there in these winds, because this is looking more and more like, again, we're going to see a lot of wind behind this, as you and Jeff have been mentioning all morning. And you can't really get out and repair those transformers. You cannot get out and repair the power lines when the winds are still gusting over 60 miles per hour. So as we mentioned yesterday, this is going to be a lot like a tropical storm. In fact, in some cases with the wind gusts, they could approach hurricane force winds, especially if you live on a mountainous area, you live up on the ridge tops. And as we've been monitoring all along, these storms are getting stronger. So you want to be in your hallway, especially as these storms approach Priceville and Hartselle, because that heavy rain, even though that wind I'm talking about, excuse me, is above the ground, it can still get pulled down by these strong gusty winds. And the important thing of this radar image you're seeing here is we're starting to see, notice how there's a different color of the blue right here, and that's moving into Priceville right now, and that's headed right into Huntsville. And I want to talk to the kids. You may be at home from school, your parents may be at work. Stay indoors, and as the wind picks up, you want to get into the hallway. So you want to stay in the hallway. I know they may have mentioned, if we get a tornado warning, here's what you should be doing. But this is a significant thunderstorm warning with considerable damage a possibility. That's why we're in continuous coverage, because it's that significant. Some of you may think, oh, it's just a severe thunderstorm warning. But this is a big time event coming through with this entire line. So once again, really concerned for Hartselle, Falkville down to Priceville, and this is moving towards Triana, and we're likely going to get more reports. In fact, I'm sure the EMA office is going to have a lot more. Let's go over to Eric. Eric, what's
Yeah,
that?
so we're talking about this storm that's moving through Decatur right now. Well, Pryor Field, it's actually in southern Limestone County there, just north of the river. The airport sensor picked up a 77-mile-per-hour wind gust, so that is substantial. Yeah, we were talking about the hurricane force winds. These are straight line winds associated with this nasty line of storms, but 77 miles per hour. So
take shelter in Madison now too. With the 70s, that's going to hit right towards down Huntsville Browns Ferry Road and on the west side there of the city of Madison. So again, 77-mile-an-hour wind gusts. That's going to do significant damage. And just because we're not tracking tornadoes, these are the kind of winds that can do.
They're going to bump it up
damage.
to 80 mile per hour winds potential. We've got a new severe thunderstorm warning that will come and show up on your screen here in 1 second. Also want to point out now, starting to get some reports. This is not storm related, but still, I believe it was on Oakwood Avenue. I think we had power lines down, and those are from the winds ahead of this main line. But now you really need to be listening up here. If you are in Madison, this is moving right toward downtown Huntsville, potentially up to the Meridianville area. Possible 70 to 80 mile per hour winds, straight line winds with this too, coming your way. That is considerable damage. We're going to see potentially a wide swath of people without power here very shortly. If you can, get away from those windows, find your interior room. 80 miles per hour, that's a EF0 tornado. Essentially, it doesn't matter what direction the wind is moving. That is going to be on top of you here in a few minutes. We'll put a quick storm track on that for this new warning that we have is actually a little farther. The polygon's a little farther to the south here, and that's the part of the line that we were watching. Eventually, it will just clip you in parts of Huntsville and Madison, but that line of wind, I'm going to put a big storm track on this just to give you guys as much heads up as we can. This is the reason we are on television right now. No, we're not dealing with an active tornado warning, but these winds, 70, 80 miles per hour. Decatur again, if you're just popping on the TV and maybe you hear the loud thunder and lightning saying, hey, what's going on? This is the line of storms right now crossing over I-65, moving into parts of Madison. And eventually, if you're in Marshall County too, kind of on the southern end of this, you are in that severe thunderstorm warning polygon. This has the mention of 80 mile per hour winds. And we've got actual proof. And this isn't a backyard weather station they have out there at Pryor Field Airport. That is as good as it gets as far as accurate information coming our way.
Yeah, and that's the kind of wind that's blowing the semi-tractor trailers over.
Well, yeah, especially when they start going west across 65. And, you know, now we're getting even more verification of these winds. And power line down on the vehicle on a roadway in Huntsville, Browns Ferry Road in the Huntsville jurisdiction. Huntsville has been notified. So a very dangerous situation.
That's going to be out by Buc-ee's, by the way, the new Buc-ee's.
So, I mean, when you're starting to get verification of these power lines and now, you know, trees down, it's all verifying, unfortunately, across this line like we figured it would play out. And we're seeing that across areas of 65, north to south, all the way from Athens down towards areas of Coleman at this time.
And the Decatur Marina there, damage to some boat slips too. So this is all confirmed damage coming right out of here to Decatur, tracking northeast very, very quickly. If you are in Trinity, your severe weather threat over. Athens, severe weather threat over. But now that we're talking about power lines coming down, obviously rule number one, treat every wire as if it is still live. We could see numerous additional power outages coming our way, but this is all coming in to now Madison County and also go off there to the Priceville area and Hartselle, Falkville. This wind, it's going to be very noisy. Don't look out your window. Just take our word for it that we've got potentially some 60 to 70 mile per hour winds. Triana right here, Marshall Space Flight Center, I'm sure they are taking appropriate action with this. And then you've got downtown Huntsville. Here's I-565, there's Greenbrier. Give it a few minutes and your severe weather threat will come to an end. Still dealing with those gradient winds behind it.
Hey, let's go to our Alpha camera in Decatur. I've got that damage. Here's a live view of the damage. I don't believe this damage was had occurred the other day. You can see the camera still shaking there. Again, it looks like this part of this boat.
Yeah, we
dock
showed
has
that
collapsed.
camera this morning, Brad.
Oh, was that already there?
It did
then?
not look like that.
Okay, all right. So here's what's just happened in Decatur with this wind that is moving. And look at you can see the strong waves there. I'm surprised our camera still has power, but significant damage there in the marina, at least from a strong wind gust there.
And even look at the wind behind it. Like I said, your severe weather threat wrapping up here in Decatur. This is just the wind behind the camera, and kind of impressed that we do still have power. We'll go back to the radar too, just because we have to give people a little bit more heads up as to what's coming. So now we've got reports of damage all the way from the state line, all behind this. Your severe weather threat is over here, still dealing with strong winds. This continues to move 60 plus mile per hour. The wording on the severe thunderstorm warnings is up to 80 mile per hour wind. We could potentially see some hail, but no reports on that yet. The biggest impact will be the power outages, the trees coming down, especially trees on roadways, trees potentially on homes. And that's why we're saying you need to start thinking, especially if you're in Madison, out to Huntsville here. Moving now, that's downtown. There's Madison. There's 565. You've got 255 there going up north, and then you've got Meridianville kind of on the northern edge of things, but just a surge of wind coming our way. All moving very quickly too, and also that threat wrapping up very quickly, and then
it's very quick moving in. I think what's happening from the looks of that the marina there, it looks as if the wind is just ducting. Basically, it's collapsing out of the storm and then moving out, and then additional ones are moving along this wave. So I'm concerned, this is going into a higher populated area, and we're going to start seeing a lot more damage. So again, stay away from your windows. I would get into that interior hallway until these storms pass, but keep in mind, if you lose power, we're not expecting another surge of this coming in behind, but we will see a lot more wind throughout the rest of the afternoon. That's what that high wind warning is out for.
Yeah, and like we mentioned, if you're without power, it could be a large portion of the day before they actually get out, the linemen and women, the utility crews. No rotation, but the straight line wind threat is the most immediate and concerning threat as this moves in. Now moving into Madison County, and eventually this will move into Marshall County. We'll pull things back, kind of give you another one of those storm tracks for you, let you know it's coming, and it's coming very quickly. So if you are in maybe a less desirable structure that doesn't handle strong wind well, it's time to start thinking, especially if you're in parts of Jackson, DeKalb County, northeast Alabama, maybe even Marshall County down toward the Gunnersville area. You're on the kind of the southern end of things, but time to start thinking about, am I going to go to that safer structure, whether it's a community storm shelter. A lot of those should be open because we are under an active tornado watch. through 1 o'clock for some counties, 4 o'clock for northeast Alabama. The severe weather threat will be over a lot faster than that. But right now, Madison, we're going to probably get a lot of reports of damage now coming out of town Madison. You've got Palmer Road, there's Slaughter Road there. You've got Highway 255, Research Park. We're moving into that area. You've got University Drive here. This is all coming our way. Anything on the Space and Rocket Center camera, other than probably just a wall?
Yeah, I checked that Madison camera too. That 565.
565. That is.
I'm getting more and more pictures. I'm just getting multiple pictures of power lines down, trees down.
Yeah.
Again, it's going to be an issue. That is looking off toward the west to southwest. That's I-565. You got Toyota Field there. This is not seeing the strongest stuff is coming probably in 30 seconds to a minute. And we'll see that there on the camera. So we could probably leave that up. And we've got the Space and Rocket Center camera as well. But
yeah, I think this kind of wind is moving through Harvest and Monrovia right now as you're going street level there. Go ahead and just give off some street names. Again, this is a very quick hitting line of storms. It's in and out, but unfortunately it is doing damage.
There's 53. You've got Wall Triana right there. You've got Douglas Road. There is Monroe, that Monroe there. And also up to Hazel Green, Meridianville. Here's 231 north and south, all the way up to the state line. So the airport right now, 67 mile per hour. I want to make sure that wasn't knots. If that was knots, that's even great. But 67 mile per hour wind. We said 70 to 80 miles per hour. Look at that camera. Look at the shake. And look at the sheets of rain and wind. This is all coming right now into parts of Huntsville from 231 north and south. This is happening right there. We've got the live look right there. That's where we have that camera set up out by Toyota Field. And then you go farther south to Triana. If you're in Lacey Spring, coming your way. The Somerville community, Hartselle, give it another probably 5 minutes and you should be okay. Crossing over I-65. And I think the reason we're starting to see these stronger winds is this is where the more unstable air is. And we were talking about that low-level jet. Those winds aloft, a couple hundred feet in the air, can get pulled down and pulled down to the surface. So we will have a power outage update here in a couple minutes. And unfortunately, it is going to be in the thousands as far as people without power now, as this is moving right through the area, right along 565 now. The camera, you can't even see anything. And I think that's about a 10 to 12 story building here. So moving right into downtown Huntsville, up to Meadow Hills here. Here's the Parkway going south. All the way down, here's the river, there's the bridge over the river, Lacey Spring, Morgan City. You go out toward Brindley Mountain there, into that area. This is all coming behind the line of storm, still gusting 60 plus and capable of damage. So even though you're not seeing the rain, we've been talking about that tropical system analogy. You might not have the humidity, that air's drier coming in, but even after your threat of heavy rain and severe wind gusts, you can see non-storm related wind gusts still pushing 60 miles per hour, and that's behind the storm system moving through. And that's also probably aiding in why this is, in fact, moving so quickly to the northeast, around 70 miles per hour would be my guess at this point.
Yeah, at least. Because they're going to follow those mid-level winds, which are, in fact, those winds about 4,000 feet above the ground are now increasing at 90 to 100 miles per hour. So extreme wind. Actually, I'd put it at about 90. And then as you go up where we call 500 millibars, that's about 120 mile an hour.
We had the camera up before, Brett. It looked like we had the whiteout conditions, zero visibility with the rain. Still a lot of wind on the camera there. That's Space and Rocket Center looking off toward the west. Very low clouds, obviously, with that rain limiting our visibility. Here's downtown Huntsville. There's Drake. This is all probably 30 to 40 seconds from moving into your area. We've got University there. There's Sparkman Drive. And you just pull it back. There's Triana Boulevard. You've got Patton Road, Martin Road.
South Huntsville, again, you need to be seeking shelter in South Huntsville. Again, get away from your windows. This is the kind of wind that can, those gas station, those awnings, they can knock those down. Again, we're getting wind gusts close to 80 miles per hour. And the other thing I want to mention is down here near Triana and going towards Lacey's Spring, and you get into this terrain here, and it's different there into parts of Morgan County. We're starting to get into where the terrain is going to have a big impact impact here on the winds as well. They're going to swirl through here. We don't see any tornadic winds. And again, if you're waiting for us to say seek shelter for a tornado, that may not happen, at least in the next 10 to 15, 20 minutes or so. But we're saying seek shelter from just these high winds. A tree falls out in the yard, it busts a window out in your house, that glass is going to blow through the house at 70 to 80 miles per hour. So keep that in mind. We are watching these areas for tornadoes, and just because we may not mention your community right now, just because we're kind of focused from Huntsville to the south, we did mention the Hazel Green area. Everybody within this line needs to be seeking some sort of shelter. Do not need to be outdoors. If you're listening to us on our simulcast radio partners, if you're driving through this and you're going down the road, you want to be in the most left lane that you can. In the right lane, you're not only going to deal with the flooding threat here, a lot of the ground is completely saturated. And that's one of the reasons the trees are going down. But there's also more of a flash flood factor. Very quickly, the water, I noticed it last night on the way home, how fast the water was getting onto the roads because it has nowhere to go. So if you're in that farther left lane, say you're going down a 4-lane road, if you're in the far left lane, number one, you're away from that flood water that's going to be developing that may cause you to hydroplane or actually just come off the road. And the other thing is you're going to be watching the tree line as well, because those trees, it's going to be kind of a slow motion fall with these trees. It's not going to be what you think. It's not going to be a quick crash, but the trees will slowly fall in most cases because the root system's still somewhat down in the ground, but the wind rocking the way it is, it makes them even more susceptible to eventually fall. And as I mentioned earlier, we could get water lines come out and gas lines too. So again, be very careful. Power may be out for several hours, as it's just not safe right now to get out and repair that. Let's go to Eric.
Yeah, a report coming right out of Madison right now, actually 1 mile to the east of Madison, a measured wind speed of 72 miles per hour. And that's not just a quick hit, that was 30 seconds, a sustained 70. And we said this would hit you hard and it would hit you very quickly. Now, unlike when we are tracking areas of rotation and tornado warnings, the street level, it's not as effective here because we are just tracking north to south across the entire viewing area, North Alabama, Middle Tennessee. We haven't forgotten you up there in Lincoln County and Fayetteville. This is all rushing your way. Every single person, if you're along and east of this line of severe wind, you will get hit with it. Straight line or rotating? No, this is all straight line wind right now. We haven't seen any pockets of rotation. This is all moving through parts of Huntsville. I mentioned a 72 mile per hour wind that stayed for 30 seconds. That's almost sustained. And then also reports on the back side of this, with numerous reports of damage indicator that on the backside, even after the rain threat is out of here, you're still seeing 60 mile per hour wind. So it's a duration event here, and the power outage numbers will continue to jump uphill. Moving into parts of Marshall County now, toward Lake Gunnersville, you need to start thinking about going to an interior part of your home away from windows, because these winds, consistent, verified 70+ mile per hour winds. You have to keep in mind a Category 1 hurricane is 74 mile per hour winds. Very concerning line of wind moving through populated areas now from Huntsville. You go out toward Owens Crossroads. If you're in the Jones Valley area, this is all coming your way here in just a matter of a few minutes. You've got Green Mountain down there pushing over Chapman Mountain here. Here is 72. You've got the Ryland community eventually heading toward you in Gurley. And I'll tell you right now, I'm going over Chapman Mountain.
Wind's picking up here at the station.
Oh, yes, it is. That is a noise I don't think I've ever heard.
I'm actually going to go outside real quick.
Brad's going to give us an honest report from what's happening right now at the 48 studio, but I would say that was straight line wind moving across probably our air conditioning system. I know the sound of what hail is like hitting the roof, but I've never heard that surge of wind. And again, this is moving through Huntsville right now. We're right near Oakwood. Of course, you know that's where our 48 studio is. Marshall Space Flight Center, a lot of people there out there, also on the Arsenal too. So we'll probably get some reports of what's happening there, trying Diana right now out to Lacey Spring. Lacey Spring, you maybe have 30 seconds to get to an interior room. There's Owens Crossroads again. There's 231. We've got Gurley out to Maysville. But the generator will kick on here in about 5 seconds. So stay with us. Brad, while I don't have anything useful to show, what did you see out there?
It looks very much like a tropical storm, minimal hurricane coming through. So I don't know if any of those computers over there need to be reset as far as hand tracking goes. But again, very strong. I'd say good 30-second wind gusts coming through. We're going
Look
to
at the trees moving too.
Yeah, and these trees don't have any. Some of these trees don't have any leaves on them either. So again, stay hunkered down until basically it stops raining. That's your indication that at least the intense wind's going. But we'll have more wind.
And this is the Parkway camera too. I'll have to check on my computer as far as hand tracking. I know you've got the Apple TV product over there that's at least showing the current radar, but we're also showing you this is along the Lanier Ford building on the Parkway. This camera is facing west. Notice it is shaking. It actually had a little power flicker on the camera itself. The trees blowing around. We've heard the gust of wind. This is all happening. Some of you might be losing power as we speak. You could find us on YouTube right now. We're streaming there. That's kind of a new service that we're providing you. You could stream on your 48 weather app. If you haven't lost us on the TV, of course, we're continuing our coverage, and this will likely continue all the way until this is off into Georgia, and then still dealing with that threat or for wind too. I'm not sure if in back, I see my computer is up. Can you guys go back to the radar? Thank you. I didn't know if we lost that or not. With the power surge, but we mentioned we're fortunate enough to have a generator. Yeah, I'm going to have to set my hand tracking back.
Okay, I can take over from here while you do that.
Thank you, Brett.
Again, strong gusty winds. This warning has been extended into all of northeast Alabama. So let's talk a little bit more about what you can expect, because again, this, as it's moving through Huntsville now, you need to be hunkered down in your shelter all the way down into Morgan County, the Summerville area. But the wind is coming so fast. Arab, your wind is picking up as we speak, and as that happens, we're going to see these winds increase. They're not going to weaken at all. In fact, the momentum is starting to build up within this line of thunderstorms. So I'm going to kind of cheat this over here just a little bit and see that area in blue behind me. So this is this storm as it's approaching Arab, and as it goes and it's forced to climb up Brindley Mountain and Sand Mountain, the winds are only going to increase, because I mentioned just the other day that the atmosphere has a lid, and once you force these storms, that's when we start to talk about potential for Sand Mountain magic, and this whole environment over here begins to change a bit. So Arab, I would be getting in your shelter now, at least the interior of your home. So this is what we're talking about. Get in the hallway as these storms approach. Union Grove, New Hope, Owens Crossroads, Hampton Cove. Same theory applies in Hampton Cove and the Big Cove area. As this comes back over Green Mountain, there's going to be a surge of this wind that may be withheld a bit as it's in the higher elevation, then it just dumps. So I would be seeking shelter indoors. I'm not saying run outside and get in your storm shelter. I think this is get in your hallway, get in a smaller room, stay away from your windows, because we have considerable damage going on with this entire line of storms, roughly from Fayetteville all the way through Madison County and now moving into Madison Crossroads. And as I mentioned, it creates kind of a unique challenge here as you get into the mountainous terrain.
So far, we've been down 231 there. I'll show you just kind of, we're starting to see a few notches forming in the line. Also some reports of people saying the wind was the strongest after the rain ended. So that is a consistent concern here. We've got some areas of rotation. That's probably the last thing you want to hear in parts of northern Madison County that got hit the hardest with Wednesday's storms. And then also, I guess we'll have to watch what's happening here east of downtown Huntsville itself, maybe from the Maysville area out to Gurley, potentially seeing some pockets of rotation, but that surge of wind is roughly just 30 to 60 seconds, but it's coming your way. We've got these giant severe thunderstorm warnings. You might not be seeing the rain right now if you're in parts of Marshall County, but I'm telling you, you've got a line of severe wind coming your way. If it's anything like what I heard on the roof of our 48 studio, I guess we'll go back up near the Newmarket area, BTI of 4.3, but that's where we're seeing areas of potential rotation now, but also starting to see some bowing segments out in this line. So I think that strongest wind would be right here, basically from Meridianville and then down to maybe the river there in Madison County, heading in that east to northeast direction. It's been a little bit since I put a storm track on this, so we will do that for you just to let the folks watching. Out towards Sand Mountain into northeast Alabama. Again, you are in that tornado watch until 4 o'clock. But here comes your storm track here. And you guys just shout at me at any time you have something.
Yeah, the wind's picking up again here.
You hear it. It's on the backside of the wind, and some people are. One thing that a lot of people are saying on Facebook Live right now, Brad and Eric, is that once that rain stops, the initial 5 minutes after the rain stops, they're getting a rush of wind behind that rain before the winds back off just a little bit. And I noticed that on the Decatur camera, it seemed like the winds were pretty strong after the rain moved east, and then they started to back off a little bit.
Outside right now.
Yeah, it really comes in quick after that rain, and it's changing direction too behind that line. A lot of you saying it's coming in a different direction, and very knowledgeable, letting us know this information. But I mean, it's intense, and some of the reports that we're getting too, with the winds not only gusting up over 60, 70, up to 80 miles an hour, but now we're getting a tree reported on a house in Pine Ridge, and we're seeing not only trees reported on houses, on cars, across roads, power lines. This is becoming a widespread damage event at this point.
Yeah, so heads up for you folks farther east. This is coming, and it's perhaps going to be worse. So again, get into your shelter, stay there until, I say till the rain stops, but we're getting these reports that about 4 or 5 minutes even after the rain, the wind picks up one more time. So that's that. Again, I know some of you kids are at home, you're scared. Again, you're going to be all right as far as the storms go. Just a lot of wind. So again, windows may break, glass may fly. So just be careful out there and stay hunkered down in there. So once the highest wind starts, you've got roughly about 30 minutes with that, and then it's going to let up just a little bit longer, so maybe 15 more minutes, and then it's just going to be windy for the rest of the day. And I know some of you may be without power, again, probably texting your parents back and forth, things like that, but you guys are going to be all right. You get into that hallway, get under a staircase for about 30 minutes as this storm's moving through.
Yeah, just the surge of wind coming in behind it too, and that's really what's pushing this line, moving as fast as it is here, moving northeasterly at about 60 to 70 miles per hour. We were watching that area of rotation, probably the last thing you want to hear out there in the New Market area.
Getting reports of major damage in Phil Campbell.
Major damage,
Didn't describe what type of damage.
That's dated too.
Yeah, it will be. That was from earlier.
And we were saying it was going to continue to strengthen. So if we have reports of major damage, some 60 miles off to our west and southwest, where now they're dealing with some strong winds as well, potentially looking at that, Brad, maybe along south of you in New Market.
Yeah, there's some circuit. Yeah, I would definitely take tornado precaution with that. I mean, that's the highest that thing, the shear rate has gone.
In Winchester right here, you've got Maysville Road, Winchester Road.
Buckhorn High School.
There is New Market.
County Fishing Lake.
You've got Hurricane Road there and Ray Road, excuse me. That it's starting to move into the more choppy terrain too. So tornado precautions needed here. This is some of the more substantial rotation we've seen at this moment, potentially right there, and that is just east of Macon Lane there. There's the Moores Mill area, and right here, Winchester Road, and then you've got Maysville Road too. There's New Market. Areas of rotation reported, and then look at the wind we have about to move. Probably just move through the Ryland area. That's my house. I guess I could check my ring camera out there. Here's 72 heading east out toward the Gurley area. Here's Brownsboro. There's Ryland Pike. Here's Maysville. Look at that.
Here's another report for you. I'm going to kind of just interrupt as we get them. The straight line wind blew out the front glass at the Sure Save Pharmacy in Harvest. So the glass blown out, the Sure Save Pharmacy in Harvest, and that's a perfect example of what I was talking about when I was talking to the kids at home. You're protecting yourself from this flying glass during this 30-minute high wind period. So again, be very careful out there. Go ahead.
Yeah, just going back, I'm going to use we are getting a little closer to the radar, so again, these aren't necessarily surface winds that we're going to be sampling, but there's the possibility that they're getting pulled down to the surface. I mean, the most important information we are sharing with you right now is the confirmation of we have damage with this. I could show you whatever you want on the radar, but the verbal heads up of you need to be away from windows. You don't want to get hit with debris here. And also, we've got significant damage in Phil Campbell. No one should have really been caught off guard by this. We've had a pretty good timeline on this, even dating back 2 days or so. Quick look at the hail.
You want to go up north of Moores Mill to Fayetteville to Huntland. We do have some circulation just south of Lynchburg, but I'm noticing in the velocity data a lot of rippling going on, so almost a lot of just swirling on the back edge of that heavy rain. And then as you go just to the northwest of Huntland, there's just a bit of circulation, but there's just rippling going through Newmarket, same area hit by the tornado just the other day. So unfortunately, those tarps on those homes are going to be blown off.
Yeah, again, near the Newmarket area, a BTI of 4.8, so that is going up too. We'll take a closer look at that here. Turn that product off for you, but they're very helpful. Before I turn that off, is here's the direction. It's the algorithm here is saying it's moving northeast at 95 miles per hour. Now, what do you think that's factoring in? The speed of the line plus the wind speeds potentially?
Well, it's the mid-level of the storm on that centroid of the storm. It's going to pick that up. That's what it, and the upper level winds, the steering currents, that 700 millibar wind is at 90 miles an hour. So that's typically how fast the storms move. They follow that flow. Maysville, again, all along this area, you need to be seeking shelter. We've got, again, it's not a widespread, like covering a mile wide path. It's very strategic, so to speak, where we see the wind damage. And behind me, what I was talking about, these little ripples coming through Newmarket, east of Fayetteville, up towards Kelso, along the Elk River, again, just rippling and swirling, just like a raging river. And we mentioned that in Facebook Live last night. What we're dealing with is basically like looking down on a river, and you get out in the Rocky Mountains where you get a lot of boulders there, you get a lot of these turbulent eddies, and that's what's happening. We've got all those little eddies. That's where we're starting to get the really high wind gusts, these super high 70 to 80 mile an hour winds. And you get north of Huntland, now moving into southern Moore County, and we do have a circulation developing there. But this isn't, a situation where we're going to watch every circulation, because we don't want to just get focused on where we may have a tornado, because we have 70 to 80 mile an hour, maybe even higher wind gusts as we get into the higher terrain that we're really concerned with. So the initial surge here is from Newmarket, Buckhorn High School down to Maysville, and moving through the Paint Rock Valley, and then it's also kind of moving down into Hampton Cove, Owens Crossroads, New Hope, Union Grove, down to Arab. So all this with time will continue to move to the east, but I think we're probably starting to see, as we refer to that negative tilt trough, we're making that swing where the storms are actually starting to pivot to the northeast. So this is probably the most vulnerable and dangerous time here in East Madison County and moving into Jackson County, and we're going to be waiting on that down here into Marshall County as well. So widespread damaging winds occurring with this initial line, but we still have more strong to severe wind gusts coming in behind all of this, and it's within these areas. Down here south of Triana, see where we get this little bow. Anytime you get this bowing segment, that's where the wind is being forced down and up into the storm. So the wind above these storms is 90 to 100 miles an hour, and it's forced down. As I drop my glasses there, it's forced down. The wind slams into the ground, spreads out, produces damaging wind, and perhaps that area doesn't continue on, but another area of strong gusty winds moves on to some other area. That's why it's so isolated in some areas, and it's not like the entire town is getting significant wind damage, but there's pockets here within this, and so far we don't have any signs of any of these supercell type storms ahead of it. So if anything, this looks just a little bit different than the model guidance suggested. It looks a lot like what it suggested earlier in the week, which is that very narrow wind channel being focused along this line of storms and not these cells developing out ahead of it. So if anything, that is a little bit better, but we still have some big issues out there. And we were talking all along, this is going to be a major wind event that you may remember for quite some time, and you may be without power right on into parts of the weekend as well. So, man, I'm seeing the bowing. Let's go up here. If you could take Max 3. I've got a real strong bow heading up here into northern Jackson County, just south of Newmarket, and this is going to be that area you were following. It's right over here. this area right here. This is where we probably have some 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts here, southeast of Newmarket, just to the north of the county fishing lake. That is moving. Again, it's moving through this higher terrain, so it's really going to kind of go up and down and up and down. And as it does so, significant wind impact a possibility there. So concerned with this area here near Newmarket, and that is tracking. Let me put a storm track on this. It's going to be tracking to the northeast. This whole bow here, tracking northeast at about 70 miles per hour or so. So again, these are the areas here. Skyline Wildlife Management Area. Maybe the times are probably going to be a little off here, but again, moving very, very quickly towards Jericho just after 12 o'clock, so about 10 minutes from now. So overall, high impact wind event continues. Here's another look at Decatur. If we can get that camera back up. It doesn't look like it's probably going to come back up for us right. Whoop, wait a minute. And it's still windy there in Decatur. Again, I had that focus down there for hurricane coverage the last time I used that. But we'll wait for this camera to come back up, and then we'll hit that.
Yeah, still just seeing numerous reports of trees coming down now across the area. We are focusing on that one surge up there toward the Newmarket area, heading into parts of northwest at Jackson County, out toward the high top radar. So we'll get a pretty good scan of exactly what's happening with this, and that's all heading northeast. Now you're probably saying, well, why aren't they doing the street level tracking like they do with other areas of rotation? Now it's possible we could see some areas of rotation from time to time, but in general, just know we've got just a big surge of wind coming your way now from Maysville and into the Princeton area there. We're seeing now the certain parts of the line, especially when you see that on the kind of the backside there, right along the river, that the rain has ended, but it looks like we got areas of wind kind of just starting to bow that area out. And then we start seeing on the other side, the rainy side of things, you start to see that surge of wind too. So if you are in Madison right now, you're probably not experiencing the rain, but probably a big surge of wind behind it. And we've continued to see reports of damage come out of Madison itself.
Eric, that area that you're tracking, sorry to interrupt, they're going to issue, it looks like a tornado warning for that area up by Newmarket where you all have been talking about where that bow segment is taking place, and the winds look like they're really strong, getting a little rotation there, and it looks like a tornado warning is going to be issued for parts of northern Madison County into Jackson County, going to trip into portions of Tennessee as well. Yeah,
it's right here, that northeast of the Newmarket area out toward you in Huntland. So tornado precautions need to be taken, and this is the benefit of being close to the radar, is you could actually see the very detailed features showing up here. We were highlighting that area. Now we're going to get some interaction with some of the topography, but when we start to see the maroon, we had the maroon on the radar the other night out in the Newmarket area, and look, you had that EF1 tornado with winds up to 110 miles per hour. So right now, if you're in Huntland, you're kind of on the northern edge of the most concerning part of that rotate. It's right there. It's crossing over the state line between Middle Tennessee right now and parts of northern Alabama. We've got Madison County. This is Jackson County, and it's right there along the state line, tracking northeast at a high rate of speed. So this is the first tornado warning that we've had for our viewing area. Now it's just kind of a sliver because of Lincoln County. I know a lot of you can watch our streams here out into parts of Franklin and Moore County too. We could use just the tornado warning for Franklin, Tennessee there. That goes until 12:30. So just a 30-minute polygon on this, and this is probably going to be not very long-lived, very quick spin up. But we could go down and look at some of the streets in the area. There's Elora Road, and there is Alabama Highway 65 coming out of Alabama and continuing over and right toward the Huntland area up there in parts of Tennessee too. We could put one of the quick storm tracks on it. It'll be interesting to see what the BTI is. One of the lowest too.
Trees down in Gurley, Killingsworth Cove area.
Get reports of power lines down in Pulaski Pike now as well in the Huntsville area. And
so active tornado warning. There's your area of rotation. You can grab that with the pencil tool here. Right toward the Huntland area, tracking northeast right now. If you are in Huntland and watching the coverage here, know that you've got a potential tornado that could spin up very quickly, maybe be on the ground for a couple miles or just a couple of minutes, especially with how fast this line of storms is actually moving. So maybe you're just joining our coverage now, and where we're seeing those bowing segments coming out of the Newmarket area and heading off to the east here. This is all moving and happening very quickly. We haven't talked about you down in Marshall County, but we haven't forgot about you. If you are in Guntersville, we've been showing you that camera out in Decatur. I think if you've got a boat out there, things are going to get pretty rough here, and it's coming very, very quickly, moving this wind, this wall of wind, and then there's kind of a secondary surge behind it too. We'll go back, put a storm track on it. Still monitoring that tornado warning that's mainly for Tennessee, though, all the way down to the Arab area. And then Boaz, you are also, of course, in the severe thunderstorm warning too. Let's move this over to the side of the screen here. Out in Athens, you guys should be okay. Maybe dealing with some non-severe wind gusts. But this is the latest storm track. Important to point out, here's Trenton here. That should be the severe threat over. Then we focus on the high wind threat. A lot of you losing power, unfortunately, with this. We've got a lot of trees coming down across the area. The reports continue to come in here. Still mentioning with the severe thunderstorm warning, phrasing here, considerable damage, wind gusts 70 miles per hour. Out in Decatur at the airport there, 77 mile per hour wind gusts. So we are just continuing to watch this line. We'll continue to get these reports coming in. And you go down 431 here, you start going into beautiful Marshall County out toward Lake Guntersville. Here's Arab, probably pretty loud. I haven't had the lightning on in a while because sometimes it can get fairly distracting when we're tracking some of this stuff. But we do have lightning concentrated kind of right along the state line between Tennessee and Alabama, and then now moving east of Huntsville. So we don't even hear the rain on the roof of our studio right now, but still I'm guessing some strong winds outside. And then you go farther to the south. If you're in New Hope right now, this is coming your way, and eventually Scottsboro here. Here's Highway 72, as you know, goes up toward the South Pittsburgh area, out toward Chattanooga. Big push and wall of wind coming your way. History of reporting and producing damage. We've mentioned all of these reports with you. Franklin out to Colbert and Lauderdale County. We'll go check on that area of rotation. My guess is that it's probably not what it was when the warning was initially issued, but that's why we'll check on things. Moving southeast of the Huntland area, and the shear tool gets a little less effective here, unfortunately, as we are so close to that high top radar. But this tornado warning right now continues until 12:30. It is 12 o'clock. Maybe you were planning on joining us for our newscast, but we've been in continuous coverage, I think, dating back to 10:30. Once we started getting those storm reports coming with this line of storms coming in up there toward Winchester, you're just in that tornado warning. The rotation doesn't look quite as concerning as it did initially. So still a straight line wind threat. Doesn't have to be rotating for this, but we're watching that. If you're out into Jackson County now, you've got a line of wind coming your way, and you can see New Hope here where that bright pink line is. And that is that big push of wind that is coming. It's going to knock down trees. It's going to knock down power lines and cause power outages too. We've said this a couple times. If you lose power, it might be a while before they actually get the power turned back on. Now we go toward the Arab area, probably pretty noisy by you. Not just the heavy rain threat out to the Baileyton area, that's in Coleman County. And then you've got parts of southern Marshall County here. We do have the Guntersville camera. It might have lost power.
Yeah,
or
we're having a little trouble. Some of the cameras, after we took that power hit, have been tough to get up. I've been trying to get them downloaded, and unfortunately, a couple of them are not coming up, and one of them is Guntersville. I'm trying to get that one to come up and work. But
something we haven't talked a whole lot about is hail. Greater hail threat now moving into Jackson County. We could use our dropper tool with this and see exactly what kind of hail. Non-severe hail, but enough to maybe put a couple pings and dents in the car. That isn't maybe in a garage or under a carport here. Haven't had any hail reports. That's not the primary concern. It's the wind and it's the debris possibility. If you're not away from windows and you get an object that breaks your wind, now that glass that has broken is flying in your direction too. Here is Scottsboro right now. Rotation is moving perpendicular to radar beam. The circulation isn't showing well. They're talking about that tornado warning here. I was mentioning that the rotation didn't look as bad you still hear the winds howling, Jeff, and it's not even raining anymore. Just sounds eerie almost.
You know, Eric, a lot of times too, you focus on that rotation and what the tornado warning is to the north, and that line extends all the way down south. And we talked about how it goes all the way down to Gunnersville. But keep in mind too, we're getting reports now too of damage in Boaz, a little bit in the way of metal roof blown on power lines on Highway 205. So this is a long area, very, very north to south stretching line of thunderstorms that's producing widespread damage. And a lot of people get kind of hung up on that tornado warning, and I understand why. But if you're not in the tornado warning, you're along that whole line that Eric is pointing out right there. I mean, we're all getting wind damage along that line. Some of the wind damage with the straight line winds have probably going to end up being maybe even more impressive than some of the winds that we get with the tornado warning. It doesn't have to be circulating. It can be straight line and still cause the same kind of damage.
Yeah, here's the latest timeline. Just take our word for it. I know we're not necessarily doing the street view tracking. It's not little notches, areas of rotation that sometimes on the radar can be easier to follow along with at home. No, we're just talking about a huge line of wind. I do want to point out that tornado warning for parts of Madison and Jackson County. Now this is solely just up there into parts of Middle Tennessee, into Franklin County. I don't even think that includes Moore County, so that we don't have any active, essentially. I know you guys watch us up there in Franklin County, but here's the latest time track here, and this is out of here probably, we're talking what, 12:15, 12:30, but the secondary surge, even after the rain has ended, will continue, and of course the storm reports will continue to pile in. We have an advantage with this, with it just being daytime, and a lot of people maybe had the day off of work because of this severe threat. Obviously this is verifying. We said straight line winds, big push of damaging wind gust, and we continue to get these reports coming in, heading right toward the high top radar. What do you think these wind guesstimates are here? 70 miles per hour. Now we keep saying, oh, these might not be at the surface. Here's the radar. So this is a pretty accurate sample, and great job by the Weather Service too, saying, we've got winds 70 miles per hour, maybe up to 80 miles per hour with this. We had that verify out at the weather station at the airport in southern Limestone County, Pryor Field, excuse me. It was on the tip of my tongue here, but a big surge of wind coming your way. Starting to see some messier features showing up here. The line isn't as concentrated. I would say this area right here, Jeff, probably has that biggest surge of wind. We were talking about that potentially coming out of the Newmarket area. So we will focus on this area just a little bit now. If you're in Princeton, I bet you it's loud, probably quite a bit of lightning right around there. That's in the distance. That's within a couple miles of you too. So we'll turn the lightning off. But this is probably the most concentrated straight line wind is right now heading toward the radar. I really hope we don't lose our radar data, because that would make our job a whole lot more difficult. If you're in the Gurley area right now, down 72, and this of course continues as you go out into parts of Jackson County, it's coming your way. You've got Gurley here, there's Woodville, Pleasant Groves, you've got Grant down here. I know you're watching in Grant. Owens Crossroads probably seeing some of the worst of the wind right now, but I really think as far as immediate surge is probably up here in parts of northern Jackson County. Jeff?
Yeah, and what I would do, if you could take two for me, just so I could show, I want to take the tail end of that line a little bit. I want to make sure that people down towards Arab know that we are watching this line, and it's bringing heavy rain and damaging winds to your area as well. Now, if you're in the Albertville area or Gunnersville area, I just was there last weekend. It's an absolutely beautiful area, and we have a camera now that's actually up and running for Gunnersville, and if we could pull that up, that would be fantastic. It's actually, you can see the rain off to the west, and what's happening is that rain starting to move closer to the lake now. So if you have a boat that you have on Gunnersville Lake and you get these strong gusty winds preceding the line and also when the line moves through your area, there's going to be some chop on that lake that we haven't seen in a long time with these winds, and that's what's happening as we see this line continue to barrel into the Albertville and Gunnersville area here shortly.
And to Jeff's point too, Lake Gunnersville is a very popular houseboat destination. I'm asking that you start thinking about a more sturdy structure than your houseboat. You can see this camera, obviously it's up on, I believe, on a radio tower there, looking at Guntersville, just the general shake in the camera. And this is all ahead of that line of rain that's coming your way. This is about to move into toward the Guntersville area in Marshall County. Here's Grant here, looking a little less organized. It's when we get that tight, narrow line like we see here. Arab taking it right now, probably that we're talking about that 30-second to 60-second blast of wind coming out of Coleman County here. And you go down, we'll take a peek at you in Boaz, out to the Sneed area, and here's Albertville, Crossville, Geraldine. Big surge of wind coming your way. And this severe thunderstorm warning does not include all of you in DeKalb and Jackson County, but I'm telling you right now, you'll be put under one. We've got a history of damage. Maybe you're just turning us on right now. We've got numerous trees down. Power outage numbers, I know they have them in back. You could, if maybe Huntsville Utilities, check in on how many they have as far as actual specific numbers to that. Here's the Princeton area. That right there close to the radar, and we can use the velocity tool because it probably is hitting at least near the surface with this. There's your 80-something mile-per-hour wind right there in northern Jackson County. I can't confirm it's reaching the surface, but probably 70-mile-per-hour wind reaching the surface. Then you've got Skyline, Hollywood, Scottsboro coming your way right along Highway 72. Guntersville, we'll show you the camera, still has a shake to it here too. And we'll go back to the lightning counter really quick. It's probably very noisy. It's not just the wind. Now seeing a bit more lightning here right along the county line between Marshall, Madison, and parts of Jackson County. It starts to get a little hilly here. We'll have to start watching for those quick circulations here. But in general, if you're in the path of this in areas to the east, this is moving very quickly. This has continued to move west to east. We got on about 10:30 when that has started to cross over. If you're in the Arab area, right along 231, it is probably very noisy, not just the thunder and the lightning. Here's Guntersville, and then the Alabama Highway 69 out to Guntersville, Arab there. There's Sneed, and you go down, you've got Albertville coming your way in Mountain Borough there. Geraldine, Crossville coming in just a matter of minutes. I think by 12:30 in the middle of our new newscast, this will already be off into parts of northwest Georgia. Doesn't mean we're not going to continue to worry about this. Severe thunderstorm warning continues. Again, that does go until 12:30. This is this large yellow polygon. High top right now, if you're watching, get ready because it is about to really be on top of you here in the next minute or so. We've got a tornado warning up there, not for Alabama counties, watching areas of rotation. Just the amount of lightning with that too shows that that's probably by far the strongest part of the line here. But you go down to Woodville and to Scottsboro, out to Hollywood, that surge, might as well put a storm track on it, let you know. A lot of you don't have much time before this wind starts to reach you and move into your area here. 58-mile-per-hour wind. Here's Henniger. You've got Eider and Stevenson, and Eider 1244 here. Now that storm track, I didn't get the full 65-mile-per-hour here, but that's when the threat will be wrapping up and off into Georgia. We got a tornado warning now for Jackson County. That's
That
They're
was
going to
just
continue it
issued-
farther south, yeah.
To 12:40, it looks like it goes to 12:45 p.m. for possible rotation in northern Jackson County, and that's the area that you were just talking about with some of the strongest winds, Eric, and tracking that area for now. A little bit of rotation too.
Yeah, here's the new tornado warning. Kind of pull back. This is for northern Jackson County. I was just talking about, you guys, regarding a straight line wind threat. Now potentially seeing a spin up tornado threat with this. Very close to the radar. We are getting a decent sample, but once it starts to move parallel, sometimes it doesn't show up. The rotation, that is, this surge of wind, though, that will knock out power. That will definitely bring some trees down. And just going back to the point that we've kind of been reiterating here is this is with the saturated, wet, muddy soils, trees are going to come down a whole lot easier. Do we have a speed on that? on the tornado warning? I'm guessing 60.
It's going to be at least 60, maybe 70 miles an hour, because it's kind of, as we were mentioning, it's getting that momentum built in within it. And the northern part of that line is definitely moving faster. I just want to let everyone know I'm getting a lot of damage reports and pictures through instant messaging and messages, and I went ahead and made a separate post on my Facebook page to post all of your reports there. And we're going to get a lot of trees down on homes, but the more significant reports, I'd ask that you put like the asterisk in front of the report, especially if it comes to structural damage, because we're kind of trying to filter through all these damage reports, and the Weather Service will also be monitoring that. So again, if you're on our Facebook page, maybe even commenting on YouTube Live or sending emails, again, I've got a place for you just to put all those separate reports, so it makes it a lot easier, so we're not kind of trying to run around and find those reports. And on that tornado warning, again, we don't want to be too focused on the actual tornado warning, because as we go down the line here, and one of the things that we're going to watch here is it's right over the radar site. So even with this being the next rad Doppler radar, we are still going to, in an S-band radar, we're still going to attenuate somewhat and maybe not see all the details, but of course velocity really doesn't have as much of an impact. But you can tell the rainfall rates are tremendous here, in addition to very strong gusty winds. And one of the other things that's going to happen here is we're going to be looking pretty much what we call down radial, and the winds are going from west to east. So you don't get as good a sampling here either. But boy, it's right on top of the radar site where we have
that's what I was
the
just gonna say.
highest wind. So we're going to see if this radar is going to hold up, because that tornadic part of that storm is moving right over the radar site. Eric?
Yeah, and that's where we have the active tornado warning right now. So if you are in a high top, tornado protocol absolutely needed at this time. And you're going to get that gap above it. Like, we can't hit it straight up because the beam goes 360. Brad mentioned some of the issues we have when it is right on top of the radar. But if we could put this in a loop here, and you'll see what we're talking about when it comes to velocity and that going right over. Watch this as it loops one more time, and you'll see that area comes out here north of you in Princeton, and then it just goes right over the radar site area in this tornado warning. Just because we're talking about the tornado warning doesn't mean you're not going to see strong winds south of this into other parts of Jackson County, especially where you have this green area here. That continues to just push out, and that's going to move into parts of Jackson County, including you in Scottsboro. We'll take a closer look up from Woodville out to Pleasant Groves, Hollywood. This is all coming your way. Make sure you're avoiding windows. Dutton eventually coming your way, and out toward Grant too. You guys are actually in that severe thunderstorm warning, and now that severe thunderstorm warning has been continued all the way to the state line. So that is the last of the warnings that we're going to see. Canceling tornado warning for Franklin County in Tennessee. You could see that polygon no longer there. Still a threat for wind moving through parts of Franklin County toward, here's Chattanooga, areas to the west too. Straight line wind threat, but high top right now. I guess we could use the debris potentially. I think we're just too close to the radar to get an accurate sample.
Plus, there's going to be a lot of stuff flying in the air from just the amount of winds we have. But there's that circulation right there as you zoom back in, as it's going away. It's pretty clear to see there.
Yeah, here's County Road 54. You've got the Bass community. Here's the state line right now. This is northern Jackson County. That's parts of southern Franklin County. And then eventually again, as it moves farther away, things start to show up a little clearer, and that is that area of rotation. Now, northeast of you in high top, Skyline, I know you're in the warning, probably that straight line wind threat. That was the surge up here that we were talking about, the greatest wind, and then out to Pleasant Groves. Again, that's going through, we go to the reflectivity, that's having to cut through all of that heavy rain too. So sometimes you start to get some hotter readings than what's actually happening. But if you are in the Bass community, think about finding your safe spot here. And now we could actually see some of those notches that we told you we'd be monitoring here all week long, saying when we've got the line coming in, there it is.
Yeah, Eric, and some of that rotation when it was west of the radar, which was by County Road 140, and I do think this is the Eastal Fork area, numerous reports of trees down in that area, which would verify some kind of damage as it moved across towards the radar itself. Lost a little bit of that rotation because it gets right above the radar, but when it was west, we're getting confirmation of trees down on County Road 140, which would put it just to the west of where the radar is, of course.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm going to go through some of these reports here. We've got a tree on a home in South Lincoln Road in Fayetteville. We're also getting some transformers blowing out west where it's no longer raining, where there's just strong gradient winds coming in. So we've got a lot of power outages being reported. I've got a lot of these flat roofs, carport things blowing off. Again, trees on homes. I don't see any really large trees yet, but mainly just pieces of trees on homes. So again, the sun is coming back out. There will be some damage assessment out there, but for right now, if you're in Guntersville, you need to be getting in that hallway.
Yeah, we just had that
with these
camera
storms
up too.
Yeah.
If you want to go back to the camera, put it. Yep. And I was just down.
We have these winds right at. Yeah, that's a pretty ferocious looking storm coming into Guntersville now. Again, the winds are really going to start picking up. We'll probably lose this camera.
Yeah. Here's Highway 79. There's Blunt Road. You've got 431 going right into Guntersville. Almost looks like we have a somewhat area of broad rotation there. You're turning the camera. Good job. Appreciate that.
Trying.
Here's Albertville now, and that's that surge of wind. And then you go back over to the reflectivity here, and you'll see when we're talking about those areas that start to bulge out a little bit, that's where we have that threat for the strongest straight line wind coming in. But look at the camera there on the bottom of your screen. That's not only the low clouds looking very intimidating, but that's going to be sheets of rain. And then even after the rain ends, you've got additional winds coming in on the backside. And that's why we start to see some of those areas here just pushing all of this wind right through you in Marshall County. Now, if you're in DeKalb County, I promise you this is packing a punch. This surge of wind that you're looking at on that camera is all coming your way, probably in about 10 minutes or so. We'll put another storm track on just to give you guys as much heads up, but I'm telling you our verbal warning of this is significant wind. Damage reported with this, maybe 70 to 80 miles per hour. This is a wind event. Brad mentioned this. You're going to remember that for some time. We'll say moving at 70 miles per hour there. Skyline area, Sewanee, out to Guntersville. Guntersville, from where our camera's at, that's probably 60 seconds from now. And then you got Scottsboro, 1229, out toward the Hollywood area. Here you go. Anything?
Okay, this out of the Huntsville area. This has all happened when that storm moved through. We've got Oakwood Avenue between Andrew Jackson and Maysville is closed. I'm looking at a picture. We got trees down and lines are all over the road there. Oakwood Avenue and Andrew Jackson. Again, if you don't have any place to go, I would stay home right now with this as it comes through, especially where we have this moving through right now. There's emergency crews are out there trying to assist best they can with these situations, but so far we have a large tree down in Sheffield. Again, this is from earlier, and we're still likely going to see more trees down. Let's go back to Eric.
So the newest warning coming out, or at least what they mentioned, is destructive is now the term they're using for this portion where we have the tornado warning closest to the radar. We're getting good samples from the wind. They say up to 80 mile per hour wind, which has been mentioned before. But the damage mentioned has also been considerable too. So that's very close to the radar. These are the winds here on velocity. Apparently I can't get a good sample, but a no joke wind here. Straight line winds, possibly rotating winds moving towards Stevenson, Bridgeport. You've got Bass right up here. We'll take a closer look. This is Highway 117. You've got going all the way down into Stevenson. You've got County Road 53, and then here's County Road 53 as well. Up there, County Road 56. There's Bridgeport. Here's Stevenson. This is going to this is a very wooded and mountainous area that we're talking about. Might have that. That's worth watching too.
Real quickly want to talk to the people maybe at the state park in Guntersville, Honeycomb Campground, those areas. I'm not sure if like the facilities are open in those areas, but an RV is not going to be a safe place in Guntersville as this storm moves through. So you need to be thinking about a more adequate shelter there. The strongest winds again are coming in from the west and southwest. So I just wanted to briefly mention that for some, because I had some messages earlier about, you know, are we safe in an RV? And I don't think you're safe here, at least initially with this, as we've seen these 80-mile-an-hour winds. Again, that's enough to blow a semi-tractor trailer over as well. And those RVs, they're not really staked down to the ground. We've had a lot of trampolines flying across yards and damage from that. Again,
there's a camera right now in
there's our
Guntersville.
camera. This is just to the north of the state park is where this location is. Just, I mean, I should say west, just to the west on the same side of the lake. But the good news, we still have power to this camera, but we're not sure how long that's going to last, especially with these really strong, in fact, those really strong wind gusts are just now moving probably just on the north side of the state park. And this is going to continue to be an issue all along this, especially up towards the Goose Pond Colony area eventually, all along the lake. So nobody needs to be out on the water in conditions
Yeah,
like
we
this.
mentioned the houseboat thing. That's a great thing to the RV concern too. I am going to take you back up to the state line. We've got another tornado warning here, just kind of a continuation. But that's what it looks like right now in Guntersville, so we're not forgetting about you. But here's a tight area. We've probably got a quick spin up happening here. We could check the debris really quick, see what we've got. Possibly there, that would be north of the rotation though, but that showed up really nice, and I'd say nice in a bad way. Here's South Pittsburgh. There's
It's moving so fast. That's moving at about 80 miles an hour.
just the line itself continuing to swing through from north to south. So now, if you are still watching us, areas to the west of this, you've got some normal general gradient winds, maybe 50 to 60 miles per hour. Probably a lot of you without power in that area. If you're in this part of DeKalb and Jackson County, basically from Jackson County and areas eastward, this big surge of wind is coming your way. All of you need to be away from windows from Guntersville down to Albertville. Don't forget about you in Boaz. Here's Fort Payne. You've got the Crossville area out to Fife, parts of Jackson County heading toward the Chattanooga area. Again, that's not necessarily our TV area, along with some of you often watch our streams out into parts of northwest Georgia. If you're just maybe finding our streams somehow on YouTube and you live out here in parts of northwest Georgia, 70 to 80 mile per hour winds possible. We've got thousands of people without power. We've got trees down all the way from the Mississippi-Alabama state line, and this will continue to just blow through and look farther off to our south, all the way down toward Birmingham, this line. And the polygons are warning for that threat of a significant straight line wind event pushing through.
You know, Eric Burke and I were working this morning. There's one thing we kept saying to ourselves, you know, the tornado watch was issued for parts of the Tennessee Valley, but it excluded areas east, like Jackson County and also DeKalb County. And the one thing we were talking about off camera was this could be the area that ends up getting hit the hardest by the end of the day. And yet, ironically, was not in the tornado watch at that time. And of course, it has been added. And now we're seeing some of the strongest winds with this line. We've already have a history of damaging winds as the line has moved through the Tennessee Valley from west to east throughout the morning hours and now into the afternoon. But now focusing in on Jackson County, especially up and towards the radar, by high top radar, is where we're getting some of the strongest winds now, and 80 mile per hour gusts. And we're seeing that line all the way stretching down into areas just west of Fort Payne down towards Guntersville. And that was the area of concern this morning when we were talking off camera, that we could probably get some of the strongest winds and the most damage.
And also a good job by the Weather Service. We started off with that initial very large polygon for Franklin, Colbert, Lauderdale County. We had a tornado warning out there in Mississippi. We've seen a few tornado warnings pop up, including northern Madison County there, and now moving into parts of Jackson County. But the straight line wind threat is the more substantial threat at this point. But as this line has moved through, and we've gotten more and more ground truth, not only from spotters, but emergency management working very hard. Most of the reports coming in, some said it was uneventful for me, others saying, wow, that was a huge surge of wind for maybe 30 seconds at a time. We had a report in Madison County of a 72 mile per hour wind gust that lasted a whole full 30 seconds. And then some people saying, you know, the worst wind actually came after the rain stopped on the back side of this. But going back to my point that I was making, the Weather Service started off with warning for winds up to 60. Then we started to move through north central Alabama. They said winds up to 70. Now we're talking winds potentially up to 80 miles per hour. We're getting some decent samples up there from the high top radar, and that might potentially be reaching the ground. But this is a very tree-filled area, some of the forested area of Jackson County, up 72. It's a pretty drive. We're also getting into a lot of that topography of Sand Mountain. So here in northeast Alabama, this is the last of it before it moves into parts of Georgia. But Scottsboro right now, probably pretty noisy by you. It's not just the rain and the wind. Anything interesting from the Guntersville camera? I wonder if the rain threat's already, well, it's pretty close to coming to an end. It should come to an end in about 5 minutes there.
Yeah, we got people commenting. They're like, we're getting 50 to 60 mile an hour winds and the sun is out. So that's that high wind warning that we've been mentioning.
And again, that's on the backside. So your severe wind threat might be over, but it doesn't matter if it's a storm-related wind or just a gradient wind of 60 plus miles per hour, 50 miles per hour, using Brad's example there. That could continually bring us some tree damage here over the next several hours. I know looking at the model data dating back to this morning, it might have changed a little bit, but it does look like the models were hinting at some of the threats and concerns for 40 to 60 mile per hour general wind gust starts to go down around 4 or 5 o'clock. Unfortunately, in time for the evening commute for some of you that didn't get the day off work on this Friday. And I really want to stress, when traveling, we not only have the possibility of trees down across the area, all across the Tennessee Valley, trees down, power lines down, but also if you're in a high profile or lightweight vehicle, that's a lot of the reason why school was canceled. They didn't want the kids out there on the school buses in this extreme wind. Brad?
Okay, getting really concerned with the Langston area here. What we're seeing is this comma starting to form here. This is where there's rotation developing. So Langston and eventually Section, what's happening, this is moving on to Sand Mountain now. So what's happening is the air is starting to rise here. So regardless of whether a tornado is going to form here, we're definitely maximizing the wind energy, probably looking at 80, maybe higher mile per hour wind here. And I also want to remind you, I just saw a picture of a shop that's down in the Somerville area, and all the garage doors, 3-bay garage, were blown out and the roof is gone. So again, that is that high concentration of wind. If your garage door faces the west or southwest, there's a higher probability of that blowing out. And what that does is the wind is forced to go in and up, so it takes the roof off, and we can start seeing some of that again with those areas. But we've got some rotation developing southeast of Grant, and it's going to be right over Lake Guntersville as you go northeast down here towards. It's going to be north of Buck's Pocket area down there, and the Morgan Cove area, I believe, down here on Lake Guntersville. I know a lot of you recreation down there. It's a beautiful spot, and it unfortunately, it's got a history of severe weather too. But if you in the past have had issues with storms coming out of the Buck's Pocket area or coming just east of Grant, these are tracking east-northeast. So Powell, Rainsville, Shiloh, Fife, you need to be thinking of where you're going to go to seek shelter. If you're in a mobile home and you're surrounded by a lot of trees, I suggest you get out of those mobile homes and find adequate shelter. You've got about 25, 30 minutes here. I'm speaking mainly here for Section. I think Langston, you're running out of time. You're just going to have to hunker down here in Langston.
A lot of lightning there too. Just the concentration of the strikes right there with that area of rotation. Here's Langston. It's right on top of you. You've got the Dutton area. Here's Rainsville, Shiloh, Fife. That little spin up there, potentially missing you to the north. But Sylvania out to Henniger and maybe even Eider. This area right here, we'll take a look at it on debris. These things tend to happen pretty quickly here. Might have a little bit of contamination potentially just because of what this is going through, but looking at the lightning too, and a lot of you probably hearing the thunder and the lightning there in the Guntersville area. The rain threat's going to end here in about 5 minutes, but get ready for another blast of a strong wind gust behind this too.
Yeah, it's only going to get higher as this climbs the bluff there, going up Langston and Section. I'm looking at the reflectivity, and you can kind of see that comma head shape on the back edge there. So the wind, regardless of whether a tornado's forming there in the air, there it is right there. That's what it looked like earlier today in the western parts of the state, and we've had considerable damage out there from those that type of structure. So what's happening there is the wind is being forced into that one area, and it's really bad now for Langston. You need to be seeking shelter in Langston and Section and up to Dutton. And as I go down the road here, even between Albertville and Boaz, there's still some really strong wind. So what I'm talking about is this little comma head on the northern edge. See how what's happening is the wind's being forced in, and then it wraps around here, so it doesn't have anywhere to go. It's kind of like that garage example where the wind is forced into a certain area and it only increases because it's not over a broad area. So I'm concerned with damage now in Langston and to the south there, and this is going to transfer towards Section and Powell and eventually Rainsville. And usually when you get this setup, it's very brief. That tornado in the New Market area the other day, it was on the ground for probably 3 minutes, and that was it. And it took probably 3 or 4 minutes for it to start forming, and we're kind of past that stage with this. So I think this is a threat for at least the next 10 to 15 minutes, and then we've also got some issues down here farther to the south. I'm going to kind of take a look at the debris signature.
Yeah,
see if
Brett,
we've got anything
great
there as
eye
well.
on that. The Weather Service saying that they're watching it like a hawk, but a very good catch there. Again, if you're in Langston, potentially too late, and also tracking to the northeast up to Dutton there toward the Sylvania area. Seeing that feature here. Here's 72. You've got Scottsboro up here, so the area of concern is south of you in Scottsboro over the Langston area, but to see that feature showing up on reflectivity.
That close to the radar too.
Yeah, and they say that they actually have the warning drawn up on it, but are kind of holding off for a second here to maybe see what it does in between scans. I'm not seeing anything on debris.
No, I didn't either.
No, but that's the area with that channeling, that wind coming in on the backside. Brad said it all just kind of gets funneled in, and then you've got the wind coming from the south and east ahead of it too. So on top of you in Langston, up to Dutton, pulling back the view. Here's Scottsboro, this pink area here that's moving into your area. That again, a lot of people live in Scottsboro, so we'll see these storm reports coming in within a couple of minutes afterwards. Aspel, right now, big surge of straight line wind, and then you'll likely see another couple of bursts come in behind that even after the wind threat too. If you're up there in Hollywood, coming your way, I do want to point out the tornado warning for parts of Franklin County, and I think Moore was under one at 1.2. That has also been allowed to expire. But Jackson County, we're going to start to see this wind interacting here with the topography like we always see. But sometimes we're tracking these, often what feels like late at night on Facebook Live, watching for those areas of rotation. A lot of times the movement on that line of storms is 40 to 50 miles per hour. We're talking about a storm, the line movement as strong as 70 to 80 miles per hour, that movement of the line, and also the threat of the straight line wind coming out of that. But all the way down into parts of Marshall County here, going back to the radar, seeing these breaks too. That's toward Dutton. That was that area that we were talking about with that wraparound threat.
Yeah, it looks like it's kind of splitting there as well.
But Sylvania, Rainsville, here's Fort Payne. Fort Payne, you've got just a couple of minutes before you get hit. We're telling you what ground truth. We've had 70 plus mile per hour winds confirmed by accurate airport weather stations. We've got reports from Phil Campbell. We'll continue to see these. Brad, his inbox getting flooded. He has a place on his Facebook page, I believe, that he wants you to actually post.
Yeah, I now have 250 comments, reports already just in the last 20 minutes on my page.
Wow.
That's how significant this is.
And it's very difficult for us to sift through too. And the problem when we're looking at the chat, sometimes we hear tree down, and in my mind I think, oh, big strong oak tree coming down. It's not always that. Sometimes it is a smaller sapling or something. But I think given the wind we've seen today, I don't think it's just going to be little trees coming down. Potentially some big longs.
I do want to focus a little out west here. This is a report that just came in. Shelley says that at 12:15, transformers are blowing like crazy in Tuscumbia, and trees are coming down everywhere. She says the wind is worse now than it was with the line of storms.
And this is just a small sample of the
Same in
wind,
Green Hill.
the wind reports that we have, and you can see that a little bit more concentrated there into parts of Franklin County, and continuing to shave the severe thunderstorm warning polygon. But these are the wind gusts, all wind reports here from west of I-65 and now pushing off to the east. I'll turn those reports off, but I just wanted to show you, and that is just a very small sample of what's coming our way. We'll continue to get them from Madison County through Morgan, Limestone County, down into Coleman County too. Right now, Albertville, a couple minutes. Gunnersville, we could probably go out to the camera. I bet you it is still shaking, but I bet you we don't have the torrential rain. Yeah, the sun out behind this, but still that gradient wind pushing in behind it could give you, look at, is that not incredible how fast?
You know, Eric, I think one thing that could really throw people off, and Brad just mentioned this too, getting reports of wind damage out west right now. You think the sun pops after the rain moves off and you think you're good, but the winds are just as strong. So don't let that sunshine that you see there in Gunnersville fool you. That sun pops and it's still very windy. We're getting reports of damage now for areas west, even well behind the main line. And keep in mind, if any tree limb or anything's been dislodged from the earlier winds when the storms move through, now you get that next burst of wind. Now you could start seeing more in the way of damage, things that may have been loosened a bit with the strong line of storms that affected you earlier, now getting that second wave of wind on the backside. That's just amazing. Moments ago it was pouring and windy in Gunnersville, and that's what you see now with the blue sky.
We've got a new tornado warning. Some of you, there's your new polygon. We were watching that area coming out of Langston there. They kind of widened the polygon from actually the tightest area we were watching. But this is a new tornado warning. We've been talking about you in Dutton now for probably the past 10 to 15 minutes, maybe not 15, but 10 minutes. Here's Henniger, there's Eider. Jeff messing with my hand tracking for just a second, but zooming in closer here. Again, if you are in section, there's the Langston area. We were talking a lot about you. I wonder if we might even be able to pick up some debris here. Not necessarily, but looking at the storm relative velocity. Here's Scottsboro. Sirens probably going off in Scottsboro, but that area, which even in this scan is a little less pronounced too, but up there toward Hollywood, also in that tornado warning. But it's this area, we often talk about that little notch. That's all it takes when you start getting into the topography here. You start to see the maroon color showing up on our shear product, potentially another area now south and west of you in the Fife community. But new tornado warning popping up here. No new reports coming in. Tree down in Dutton with power lines, Dutton County Road 124. So that is the area that is warned at the moment. Right here, Dutton. And we've kind of got that little break there. There's Scenic Drive, County Road 67 here, tracking northeast at a very high rate of speed. Henniger also in the tornado warning and up to Eider too. Going south now, this is we're moving into peak DeKalb County here. Geraldine, Fife, Rainsville, Sylvania, out to Crossville, Albertville, maybe even seeing some glimpses of sun. Moments after that, the blast of wind comes through, the sun actually pops out, believe it or not. And then we go up into parts of northern Jackson County. If you're in Bridgeport out to South Pittsburgh, I believe they have the Lodge Cast Iron Factory up there. And here's Stevenson. This is going to be wind gusts, probably 70 miles per hour. So even though you might not hear tornado sirens, this whole line is packing a punch from north to south, and we'll likely continue to see trees coming down potentially here for not just the event of the severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings that are active, but all the way through this evening before that very gusty wind finally starts to subside. Brad, anything new?
Just more and more damage. I mean, it's insane, the amount of damage. And we talked about this, and sometimes it doesn't quite do what we say it's going to do, but it did exactly what we said it was going to do today.
Okay, so we have a report coming from emergency management, potential tornado touchdown there in the Section community. Yeah,
we were telling you about 6-7 minutes ago to be seeking shelter there in Section.
Look at that, Dutton too. Said your name, town's name many times. It's going to be that area right here.
And that circulation's not yet over Section. Section's pretty much it's right there at the top. You know, you can look over the bluff there just as you climb up the mountain from Scottsboro. But again, all that entire area, as you get east of the the Tennessee River and Lake Gunnersville, the wind is being forced. And whenever you force the wind to do something, it's going to increase in some fashion or it's going to change direction. So that's what's happening. It's accelerating. So it's being forced to. There's our debris signature right there.
So this is a confirmed tornado now, or at least at some point we had a tornado touchdown confirmed by Jackson County Sheriff's Office, I believe, and that's continuing now into Dutton. So Dutton, please be in your safe spots now, tornado protocol, and even if you're downwind of this, maybe toward Henninger, Eider here, this is in parts of Jackson and DeKalb County, you need to start seeking shelter with this. We've got a confirmed debris signature there showing up plain as day. This is south and east of you in Scottsboro, but here is Dutton. This is Russell Street. There's Scenic Drive. There's Alabama Highway 71 right now. Here's County Road 59 out toward the Sylvania area. Yes, this is off to your west and northwest, but that is not what we want to see popping up. And that's the same area that came out of the Langston area. Brad, with his experience and his trained eye, pointing that out right away, saying we need to watch that as it crosses over the river. And there it goes. There we have a confirmed tornado on that near the Dutton area. My chat dropped out again, Jeff, so any added updates very much appreciated here before I have a chance to reset my password. And there's your reflectivity right there. Kind of sometimes when you see the separation, that's where we get the area. And they're starting to trim a little bit of the backside of that warning, but we've got a tornado warning, confirmed tornado on the ground right now with the debris being lofted, sometimes thousands of feet in the air. And we warned you, the wind starting to interact with the topography here is going to have an impact. Valley Head outside of that warning, Henninger, Sylvania. Most of the track has been northeasterly, so Henninger, it will be fairly close for you. But there is that right there.
It looks like Bluff Road in section is where the actual tornado was reported touchdown. So that would be like southwest section, long areas of by like Highway 265 as it moves towards Main Street.
Yeah, but that's the reason for the confirmed tornado. I'm guessing they changed their wording on that.
Yeah, they did.
Okay. But also, if you're south of this, you've got a lot of wind coming. Can't keep forgetting.
Down towards Powell, I mean, there's a big surge. You can kind of see that. That's south of the tornado warning. We've got a big surge of wind coming into Powell. That is probably, I would say, 70 miles per hour, moving towards Rainsville, Sylvania, and Henninger. So this is a situation, yes, we've got a tornado. That tornado may be doing 100-mile-an-hour wind damage, but you get down to the south, and that's probably 70 mile an hour.
Just that you could see it, just the big push coming our way, eventually moving into parts of northwest Georgia, and you'll see this here. If you're in Fort Payne, guys, we've got a couple minutes. Please, we've been saying everyone needs to stay away from windows. Debris could break the windows of your home. We've seen garage doors have been blown out from this wind too. Here's Crossville, Geraldine, Fife, up to Rainsville. We'll go back and check on the tornado warned storm right now. I think it could potentially still be going here.
Yeah, it's possible. I think the storm to the south may be kind of taking over now because as you go back to the reflectivity, you'll see the shape of the storms is starting to look different. They're breaking off of the line a bit.
Potentially cutting that, but that's where we're getting that push, maybe that straight line wind too.
Exactly.
Right in there. So Fife, Rainsville, Sylvania, and then maybe even down to Geraldine here. The southern part of that storm, even though you're not in the tornado warning, you might not have sirens going off, but it is coming your way with the wind too. Debris still?
Yeah, Rainsville, I'd say your winds are picking up. There's still debris. That's actually, is that south of that location?
It is. It almost looked like it went back. So it's kind of behind it, and you'd think it'd be in front of it, just given the wind speed aloft and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, now just kind of, unless it's out there in Eider,
that could
possible.
be. I mean, it could be actually blowing, and of course the winds are so strong. If there's debris from that tornado, it's going to be falling
ahead.
Out. So it's going to be falling in Pisgah. So it may be boards, insulation. So as you get northeast of that confirmed tornado, the winds are at about 100 miles an hour, so it's throwing that debris out. So you may see some of that scattered debris in that vortex signature. But overall, the tornado debris signature, I should say. Again, you need to be in your shelter there in Pisgah with this storm moving in from the west. So everybody out here really needs to, again, don't say, I'm not under a tornado warning, so I shouldn't seek shelter. I think everybody needs to be seeking shelter along this line because this is significant wind. So we're talking Powell, Rainsville, Shiloh, Fife, Lakeview, Geraldine, Crossville. And even behind this, we have significant wind going on and power outages continue, trees continue to fall west of this line. So what we're looking at here is possibly two circulations starting to form, one near Pisgah, the other one west of Sylvania, but it's also bowing a bit. So this is a concern as we go down the road eventually as far as forecasting where we may get another tornado. Another thing to keep in mind is we're moving away from the radar. Pretty good radar vantage point here as this all tracks to the east-northeast. So Pisgah, you need to be staying in your shelter at least for the next 20 to 25 minutes or so. And this is an area that as far as you're trying to get satellite coverage, your satellite signal is probably going to go out with this. And if you're watching us, and this is why it's important when we talk about these news stories on television about trying to develop better Wi-Fi and internet signal in the county areas, especially when it comes to emergencies such as weather right now, that people are still able to stay informed. And you're probably not going to hear your tornado sirens as much wind that's going on there as well. So again, important to have broadband internet in all of these areas so you can get us on your phone because again, your TV may go out, your power may go out, and you may still have cell phone reception in these areas. And I know it gets a little difficult because when we have our storm tracker out in the field, we get into some of these rural areas and the signal is not nearly as good. So you should be staying in your shelter there. And I know you guys have been out of school. It's going to talk to the kids here that are experiencing this storm coming in. What's going to happen is you're going to hear a really loud roar. It's going to sound like the jet engine, and that could be two cases. It could be this tornado that may or may not still be on the ground. And I do want to emphasize all tornadoes are a little different. And we're not looking at a tornado that's coming through and it's going to wipe the house all the way to the foundation. So if you get into that interior room or into that interior closet, you're going to be fine. Get a blanket, maybe even your bicycle helmet, put that on, because that you're able to avoid head trauma with that. And what that means is injury to your head that can cause a real big headache, right, at the very least. So again, that's what you're trying to do. Again, if you're the big brother and you got other kids involved here, again, just remain calm. We've got tornado possible here now. I don't know if the circulation's still tight enough to have this on the ground, but trees may be falling outside. You may hear glass breaking, as we've had numerous reports of that. So again, be careful. And down here in Sylvania, we're still starting to see still some signs here that we've got, again, terrible wind coming through. It's going to be like, and a lot of you probably haven't been through tropical storms or hurricanes, and that's exactly what this feels like as it comes through. And even to the west, we've got a lot of wind, and we're not going to be able to detect it on radar because the radar only detects wind when you have the raindrops within it. As the rain is falling, it tells which way the wind is blowing, and that's what we're continuing to monitor here, especially from Sylvania to Henniger and in northern parts of DeKalb County with these heavy areas of rain and the strong to severe wind gusts coming through. And you can kind of still see what we've got is a little supercell, I think, that's stuck in the line north of Pisgah, and that's what's happening when you get this break in the line. And I'll loop that one more time. It's just north of Pisgah and west of Eider. So this is quickly going to wind down as far as that intense hurricane force wind gust goes and the tornado threat. But as we go through the afternoon, some of you kids are going to be at home. You're going to want to venture outside. You're going to go. I mean, when I was a kid, I'd go out and play in the mud puddles and you name it. But you want to stay indoors because as we're getting more and more reports, there's trees still falling when the sun is out. So don't let the sun confuse you and say, oh, the severe weather's over. The severe thunderstorm threat's over, but we still have a lot of strong gusty winds. Jeff, what kind of reports are we getting in from the National Weather Service right now?
A lot of trees down in and around this area that they've been watching through Langston and also into areas such as Dutton and Section, and numerous trees reported down and also some power lines down as well in the Section area. So power outages being reported in Section where we had the tornado confirmed touchdown, and I would imagine probably more in the way of power outages being reported in Henniker and Powell and towards Fife, where many of you that are in the Fife area saying that the winds are picking up, and most of you are saying they're incredible. Majorly picking up is what we're getting from numerous people from the Fife area on our Facebook Live. So getting confirmation from you, the viewer, as well as what we're seeing here. And Brad was all over this when it was in Langston, calling it right away that we had to keep an eye on this and certainly producing some damaging winds.
Now, emergency management saying potential tornado on the ground, County Road 6. Possible rain wrap. We could be getting some difficult reports here.
Is your mic battery?
I gotta go get your batteries, buddy.
Okay, you need new batteries.
No,
Come
I was
over here
just
closer
muted.
to me with that report.
Yeah. Tornado on the ground, County Road 6, possibly rain wrapped. That's just coming in right now.
Okay.
So again, this is a confirmed tornado.
We've got overturned camper on Ryan Street in Section. And we've got tornado on the ground, County Road 6, and this is in DeKalb County, I'm taking it, and County Road 61 in the Pisgah area. So we continue to track a tornado. I think there's a supercell hidden within that line
and
there.
You were starting to point that out too. Also, just DeKalb County here, a lot of wind coming your way, a lot of rain, a lot of lightning with this, and even after the rain stops, we've got a surge of wind coming in behind that too.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look terribly impressive in the velocity, but it doesn't matter because we've got a confirmed tornado. We've got damage being done by that tornado that's moving through. And you see how quickly that can happen. And that's why we're really monitoring the area south of Henniker, south of Sylvania, and even as you go from Rainsville to Fort Payne, you go down into I think it's Wills Valley there, you get a change in elevation, and we're seeing some really strong wind in those areas. Really not good. In fact, we're probably going to have issues on I-59. So if you're able to get our broadcast over there in northeast Alabama on Interstate 59, if you're in a semi, we have had reports earlier from these kinds of winds. It was over in Mississippi. We haven't had any reports in Alabama, but that was earlier this morning. If we get an 80-mile-an-hour wind gust, it's going to be a crosswind, as Jeff was mentioning earlier, and that is going to knock over semi-tractor trailers on I-59. So just something a heads up, and that's all the way down towards Reese City. So we're basically talking into northwest Georgia, from Morganville to Trenton, all the way down through Fort Payne. This is going to last at least over the next 35-40 minutes, and then after that, our wind gusts are going to be more on the order of, say, 50
And look
to 60.
at the lightning there, too. So this is going to be very, very noisy as all this is continuing to happen here. Lightning, probably some of the more concentrated lightning we've seen out throughout this whole event here, and then down into Fort Payne, I-59 there. You get that blast of wind coming through. This is almost over the state line into parts of Georgia. We're still in our new newscast here, and this will continue likely as we go into the 1 o'clock hour until there's at least no imminent threat of seeing some severe storms. I'm just trying to keep an eye on chat as well, just to see if we have any new development. But here's Eider here. Some older reports coming in. That's all the way back from Moulton. And then you've got Alabama Highway 75 here. Here's Cartersville up to the Flat Rock area, Eider. If you're in Shiloh, just outside of this, but this whole little area of wind moving through the area.
Yeah, we're getting shingle reports off of homes, fences down, pretty much everything we kind of highlighted.
Section reports of a possible funnel, again in Section. That's probably a dated report coming in because it's moving out of there, obviously. But we did have reports of a camper flipped over there in the Section area. Again, that's all the part of this tornado warning right here, and that continues. If you're in Eider and then eventually Trenton, and notice again how far in advance they are putting out these severe thunderstorm polygons all the way now basically up to I-75. You've got Dalton, Georgia there, but they're just trying to give, not only is this moving so fast as far as the speed of the line, they just want to give as many people heads up as possible. So now into parts of DeKalb County, still in the severe thunderstorm warning, and this surge of wind continues to push through. A lot of reports coming from areas off to our west, and just stay away from the windows, really. Here with this, the wind, we're talking, we mentioned right from Henniger out to Sylvania to Rainsville, Shiloh, and Fife. That debris is no longer there.
And right now I have over 350 damage reports on that Facebook post I made about 45 minutes ago. And that's not including what's going on here now.
And that's, Brad, they keep coming in from areas to the west, and now it's getting kind of confusing, and this is happening in the National Weather Service chat, is you're getting reports in Moulton of some damage to a roof, or a roof collapse, report of roof collapse, and even in the National Weather Service, Todd's asking, hey, you know, are these from round 2? Is this the second phase of the wind, or is this an earlier report from the line when it moved through Moulton? And surely, in the end, it really doesn't matter because we just want the reports. We want to make sure everybody is safe, but, you know, are you getting that second burst of wind on the backside that's even doing more damage from the initial line that has raced through the valley throughout the morning hours and now into the early afternoon? And we talked about it is like it really truly is almost like 3 punches. It's the wind prior to the line, then the line itself, and then behind the line. And that is exactly how it's playing out. We talked about that this morning, that the winds were going to be so persistent even if you didn't have the line on top of you.
Getting reports the roof is now gone on the, I believe it's the Salvation Army in Sheffield. So again, we don't know if that's now but then we're getting trees down all over the place in the same areas. East Limestone, the winds continue to howl there. So it's not over as far as the trees falling, the power outages. This was a very robust line of storms. It continues to move northeast, and you can really see that supercell right there north of Eider moving towards Shiloh. So again, if you're right up along the state line, you need to be seeking shelter. And just because we're not telling you you're under a tornado warning doesn't mean it's not dangerous, because we've got dangerous weather from Rainsville, Sylvania to Henniger, all the way to Eider. Pisgah, I will say you can get out of your tornado shelter though there, but just
and first responders are going to head that way. I heard, Zach, it's Coleman County, 19,000 people without power now.
Coleman County?
Coleman County.
Okay. 19,000
there. Tornado warning, I believe, is going to be allowed to expire here. That's this red polygon. Emergency managers reporting that responders are going to start to head out to Section, Pisgah, and Rosalie. Nothing new coming out of that. So we had a tornado. It showed up on the radar. We had the debris being lofted in the area. Again, I mentioned that polygon was allowed to be dropped. Almost done with this initial line going through. Right now we focus on Interstate 59. We could potentially, if we still have those 70-mile-per-hour winds, we could see some 18-wheelers maybe that are traveling north and south up I-59. They could be unaware that this is all happening, that there's a dangerous wind right along the interstate corridor there in DeKalb County and Henniger. A couple minutes from now, the sun will be out, believe it or not. You'll still have some strong winds coming in behind it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're able to get our broadcast, I know we have some simulcast partners over in that part of the neck of the woods. And this is why we stress to not be listening to your Spotify or your Apple Music when you're out on the road in dangerous conditions. These are not your normal severe thunderstorms here. And let me WKAE and WJIA over there. Again, 98.3 in Scottsboro, and you might even be able to get us up in Cowan, Tennessee on 1440 WZYX. So again, the Guntersville area. And some of you may be having to listen to this now because your power is out, your internet may be out. So again, if you have someone who's trying to get information from you, maybe a loved one, a family member that's texting you saying, I can't get any information out of here, that's where they can tune to. WKEA 98.3 out of Scottsboro and WJIA FM 88.5 in Guntersville. And I believe we are probably still on Mix 96.9 in Huntsville. But if you're driving a high-profile vehicle, I would find a gas station and get on the park on the east side of that gas station. These high winds are coming in on the west side And again, it's going to move through. It's going to be very violent, and it will last for about 5 minutes, and then it subsides somewhat, but there's still a lot of high wind behind it. Again, we're hoping we can avoid overturned tractor trailers. That's a very busy section, probably as this time of day on a Friday as well, coming from Chattanooga south, and also maybe traveling. I mean, I think we're getting close to spring break for some of the college students as well. So very dangerous coming in. Avoid the overpasses. A lot of people try to park under the overpass, but the wind just accelerates in those overpasses with these kind of high winds coming through. And roughly takes about 100 miles an hour to flip a regular vehicle, about 80 miles an hour if you've got a high-profile vehicle. We've had at least one camper that's been flipped in the, I believe that's in the Section or Pisgah area. So again, very dangerous storms. This is coming through. Our continuous coverage will last a little bit longer, but once these storms get out of here, again, we're going to regroup with the newsroom and see what kind of plan we're going to have, because there's so much damage to cover here, and the winds just continue to be very, very high.
And we had some 18-wheelers reported out in Mississippi before 9 o'clock this morning that were coming down. Brad mentioned find a gas station, get off the road. That's a good point, but watch out for the awnings, too, at those gas stations as they're up there, and they tend to get thrown around too. Just trying to keep you guys safe here. Coming again from emergency management, some minor structural damage on High Top Road in the area that was warned too. They're going to have to comb through this. This will take a while. We know we did have a tornado out in those areas.
I think we got a tornado developing in northern Etowah County too. Again, that's just out of our viewing area, but I do want to extend that. And that's down there just northeast of Gadsden, moving towards Leesburg, and this will be the Weiss Lake area eventually moving in. So again, we're just starting to develop. I think it's a developing tornado. They're going to develop very quickly in these areas, and also the model guidance was suggesting that this area was going to be a big concern by 1 o'clock.
Yeah,
there it is.
And we could put the track on it too. Again, tracking northeast, a Barron tornado index in the 4 to 5 category. Given the amount of wind we have pushing this entire system through, this is certainly possible. So that's something to keep an eye on. Brad mentioned Weiss Lake. I know, especially during the summer months, I get a lot of emails asking, "Hey, I'm going down there. What does the weekend forecast look like?" But this is a big surge of wind. Now this is crossing over I-59. This is going to start to move into parts of northwest Georgia. I know some of you on the stream might be watching, maybe even out all the way out from Rome too, but a very, very concerning line of straight line wind. We've seen some areas of rotation. We've had a tornado produced out of this too, but this surge continuing, and it's going to potentially knock out your power. We've got down in Coleman County, we've got some 19,000 people without power. Earlier, we had 10,000. I can't think of the community that we reported that earlier, but a ton of people. We're going to go back over to Brad really quick. Brad?
Yeah, I wouldn't interrupt, but I think this is pretty important here. They give this report here out of Muscle Shoals. It says, "I don't have a picture, but my neighbor just lost a big portion of their roof in Muscle Shoals. It happened around noon, so about an hour ago, and that was well after the storms came through. So the wind is worse. In some cases, the wind is much worse now. Again, we're getting reports of roofs off of being at least partial roof tears off of homes, especially if you have a flatter roof. It's going to be more susceptible, especially those carports, because what happens, the wind just basically takes it like a tin can and rips it right off. So the fact we're getting this kind of structural damage continuing behind the wind. Now, I think this kind of wind is going to last probably for the next 2 hours, and then slowly the wind gradually from west to east is going to start to subside somewhat. But overall, very dangerous winds continue, and that's why I'm telling everybody I would not go outside with these wind gusts the way they are. And of course, you probably have to go outside at some point in time to let the dogs out, things like that. We know those situations do arrive. But again, very dangerous weather out there. And the sunshine's a bit deceiving, because normally when we have severe weather move through, a lot of times it's dark and you're really aware of your surroundings, and you're like, okay, I really don't want to go outside. But in this situation, you may be going outside to assess some of the damage that's been done to your property, and there are power lines that may be hard to see. They may be hidden under some of this debris. And with that, I know some of you are probably trying to tarp your roof down thinking it's going to rain again. The rain is not going to return, so if you've had structural damage, I would not get up on your roof right now. A lot of our injuries and sometimes fatalities happen post-storm. And this happens a lot during hurricanes and tropical storms, people trying to get out quickly. And you get this adrenaline rush, and we actually have heart attacks from people working too hard. So again, if you haven't used a chainsaw in a long time, that chainsaw, it's a different animal. You want to make sure you're wearing all the safety equipment. As again, when you get that adrenaline rush, you want to help all the neighbors with the chainsaw. You want to get out there and get everything taken care of. But you need to take care of yourself too, because when we get these adrenaline rushes in our body, it's our natural response to try to get out there and clean up as soon as possible. But that can wait another day. Tomorrow's going to be, unless it's an absolute emergency, unless someone's, say, trapped. Again, emergency crews are out there all across North Alabama trying to help with these situations. But again, if you've got, say, some minor damage, something that can be held off till tomorrow, the weather's going to be a lot nicer tomorrow. And the reason I say this is because it's not dark, it's light, and it's deceiving, the fact that the sun is still out. So just, again, be very careful when it comes to cleaning up. You've survived the storm as it's moved through. Don't be a casualty of the storm going out and trying to do too much. And I can see some of you having a conversation with your wife right now. Let's get back over to Jeff, see what other reports we've got coming in.
What's the status of the watch? We out of the watch here?
Yeah, what happened was they've been trimming that tornado watch back, and we knew that was going to start to happen once the line moved east. And the tornado watch itself has been now just for areas mainly east, so including areas like Jackson County and DeKalb County down towards areas like Marshall County. So you're still in the tornado watch until 4 p.m. But we know that the back edge of the line of the storms is now moving east of I-59, and we'll see that line continue to move east. The tornado threat will back off, but you still have those strong winds behind that initial line that could continue to cause some kind of damage. And just because the tornado threat may wane a bit here as the line moves east, you still could have some damage reports. We've seen that behind the line already, and something we'll be tracking into the afternoon.
Yeah, DeKalb County and parts of Jackson County almost out of this. And I know everyone is solely going to focus on this line and say, oh, at least that's over with. I want to report that Decatur, Pryor Field, out there at the airport in Limestone County, they are still seeing wind gusts. Still, right now, look how far east the line is of where that airport is in Limestone County, and that is a good weather sensor there. That's airport, that is aviation approved equipment. This isn't just a little backyard weather station, not to discredit your backyard weather station, but we are still well behind the severe line of winds, seeing wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour. So those are severe winds not associated with this line. Those are the general gradient winds. We'll pull back the view here, just kind of show you what's going on. Nothing behind this, but we'll be dealing with the wind threat. That wind threat will likely continue all the way through maybe 5, 6 o'clock when the high wind warning expires. The polygons continue to move and be extended farther east into parts of northwest Georgia. If you're in Fort Payne, believe it or not, you'll actually get to see the sunshine here in a couple minutes. I just checked the camera at my house here in Madison County, and the sun very bright and shining out there. But the wind now tracking east of I-59, moving out toward Menlo here. Valley Head seeing some strong wind. And Brad had some excellent pointers for you guys that are already probably trying to say, I need to get out there. This needs to be done. Potentially an area of rotation there south of you in Fort Payne when we start to see kind of that little notching feature there, worth keeping our eye on. We'll see where the lightning counter is at too. That's where most of the lightning is. And we had that area to the south too, toward Weiss Lake that we were looking at for rotation. And that happens to be where we have the area of most concentrated and frequent lightning here. We've got trees down in Section, Dutton, and Pisgah. So that is where we had the confirmed tornado. And just reports of trees down. I'm not sure about structural damage coming out of this yet. Potentially an area of rotation there north of you in Center. And then we go out toward Fort Payne. No active tornado warnings. And again, this is the technical end of our actual viewing areas, you in DeKalb County, but a whole lot of wind pushing through. This is confirmed reports of damage, even confirmed reports of gradient winds behind this up to 60 miles per hour. The polygons continue. This will be over, but that doesn't mean the wind event is essentially going to be over. This could be one where we have the sheer amount of power outages and people without power. In back, I know things are almost about to wrap up. We'll probably continue our streaming coverage once we check in with the newsroom. Do we have any actual numbers? Maybe at Huntsville Utilities. I know we got hit hard. That feels like, what, an hour ago maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe how fast this line has moved east and how much damage it's left behind the valley. But, you know, bringing up a point, if you've lost power, and we've talked about the power outage numbers being so high, you know, let's start thinking about generator safety. You know, you don't want to have a gas generator in the garage or home. You know, obviously the one thing you want to do is try to get a little power back to your house, but you want to do it safely too, especially if you have a prolonged outage. You know, something to remember as we go into tonight and tomorrow. And I'd have to think that some of these power outages, the numbers being so high, and you can't get back up and fix things right away. You got to wait till the winds die down tonight. You've got a situation where you go into the weekend and you're looking at the potential where maybe you start off your Saturday morning with a little bit of lack of power and no power being restored maybe until even Saturday afternoon. The numbers across the area range, you know, from as much as 18,000 in Coleman County now at this point. My number might even be a little bit higher. And the numerous amounts of reports of damage that we keep getting in addition to the power outages, this is going to be a long cleanup process. This isn't going to be something that we fix in like 2 hours. It's going to take a little while to get back up on our feet until we can get the power restored and some of the damage reports cleaned up.
Yeah, one area we are watching, this is south and southeast of you in Fort Payne right now. That is the county line right there of DeKalb County about to push over. Kind of a broad area of rotation. You just had that big surge of wind come through. We are watching that. That's about to continue over. You can see kind of the red-green there and that little zigzag, if you will. Again, moving out of DeKalb County. If you're joining us from Georgia, this is coming and it is serious. So we've got a lot of people without power. And I want to just reiterate what we've been hearing as far as these storm reports coming in, Jeff. The people saying that, you know, the initial gust and the rain was pretty intense, but the thing behind it, after the rain stopped, that secondary surge is the more impressive part of this. Other people that experienced this line coming through said it was pretty uneventful, didn't do much of anything, and we were kind of trying to hint at that going through our coverage. We can't just zoom into street level here and say, you know, it's everywhere, and certain parts of the line, we're packing a lot more of a punch, like we saw earlier up into parts of northern Jackson County, right here along High Top where the radar is moving there, parts of Middle Tennessee. And then we've got all these people without power now in Coleman County. So it was happening. It was all happening very, very quickly. We're now in the NBC news programming. The new newscast has come to an end. Obviously, you watched Brad, myself, and Jeff continue to track this. But short-fused severe thunderstorm warning coming. And that will wrap it up here, and then I'm focusing on the threat for lingering wind gusts coming. Trees and power lines down. That's out Boaz Golf Club and Boaz. Trees and power lines down, and that shows you the north to south coverage of these storm reports that we've been getting in. There are the additional new polygons now moving into Georgia, and you've got Fort Payne here. Fort Payne, and I bet you in about 3 minutes you get to see the sunshine, and then you'll probably still have some 50, 60 miles per hour. Not only that, but you are up in the higher elevation. You know, it just tends to get sometimes a little bit more blustery here. The continuation of that warning, mentioning the considerable damage tag, maybe 70 mile per hour wind with this. Are kind of surprised we didn't see more hail reports with the line, but usually these lines, especially those Boeing segments, give you that immediate threat of seeing the straight line wind. Jeff?
Yeah, you know, tracking the storms you mentioned too, like some people saying that they got the strongest winds when the line moved across their town or they got it behind it. There was also a few of you on Facebook Live that were saying that as the line was approaching you, especially when it was out towards the west in the Shoals into Russellville, and you lived in like Moulton or you lived in Cortland, you were saying that you were getting tremendous amounts of wind that were way ahead of the line itself. So we've seen a little bit of everything. You know, we've had the winds preceding, we've had the winds behind the line, and then we've had, of course, the strong winds lining up with the actual line as it moves through, especially when it moved through Huntsville here. And we could hear it. I mean, it was like sound the roof was going to cave in on us here at the station. And it's those strong winds. You're talking 60, 70, and then some estimates of maybe even close to 80-mile-per-hour winds. I mean, we talked about how whether or not you have a tornado warning or not, it doesn't matter if the wind's twisting around in tornado warning or tornado fashion where you get a tornado warning. It can also come down straight line winds and can cause just as much damage as well. And we saw that today. Two different elements of wind that can make a big difference in how the storm plays out for your area.
Really quick, check on you guys in DeKalb County here. Fort Payne had a weak little area of rotation. Seems to be moving off to the east. This is the last of the severe wind we're talking about, the severe wind we're talking about, drinking a lot of water here out toward Center and then eventually towards Somerville too. But it's going to take a long time for the rest of the afternoon for these storm reports to continue to come in, and we will slowly start to get a better number on how many people are without power and how fast the crews can actually get out. The hardworking people of our utility companies, they're not going to put a linesman or lineswoman up in the bucket when there's a threat of 60-mile-per-hour wind, and we're still getting reports of that out in Decatur, so far behind this severe line of wind pushing through. So the last of our severe thunderstorm warnings are about to expire. We'll kind of go over the plan with the newsroom and Brad, and I know he's gotten just absolutely flooded with people taking photos. It's very helpful if you could say potentially what time that came in, because the timestamp on your photo and your storm report helps us match up what was going on the radar here. But just a sliver of you there in DeKalb County up toward Valley Head, east of Fort Payne, out to the Menlo area, and then eventually pushing into Somerville. But that's really the end of the severe threat. But dating back to this morning, we talked about the 1-2 punch, and unfortunately the second punch in the flurry here is going to be the gradient wind. So just general gradient strong winds associated with a pressure difference between high and low, a deepening center, and the bigger the difference between the high and the low, the tighter your pressure gradient, and then the stronger wind gusts you're going to see here.
Yeah, Eric, we got to continue to track the power outages, and the numbers continue to go up. And even as we continue to see, I mean, you got Huntsville there, and notice if you zoom in, you can actually see the red dots on there. And that's when you start to get into some of the higher numbers of power outages. And that's when you're looking at places like, 1,300, 1,500 in that one little red dot that you see there. And Decatur continuing to see power outages there. And that's the thing, is it's not just confined to one part of the city. It's all over. It's like when you go to Huntsville, you go to Decatur, it's not just one section that seems to be hit harder. It's the entire city. And it's not just Decatur. It's not just Huntsville. It's for areas like in Athens. And you continue to see that is Lawrence and Morgan County. And we talked about when the storms moved through that area, the number of outages were climbing so fast back when that line moved through, which seems like forever ago, but it was really mid to late morning. And continuing to track this line moving east, there was also numerous reports of power outages in Lauderdale County, in portions of like Muscle Shoals and Florence, and out towards Killen as well. And continue to track all the power outages. And moments ago, I just talked about how this is going to take a while to get back up on our feet. I mean, there's a lot of power outages, and there's a lot of damage too. For some locations, you got to clear the damage before you can even fix the power outages. And then you still have to get people up in the bucket, and you can't do that yet until the winds back off. It's a domino effect. And that's statewide.
And
look
that's
at
a statewide
numbers.
look. And we were talking, they've been warning this all the way up from the state line of Alabama and Tennessee. Some Tennessee counties were obviously in that severe thunderstorm warning, even tornado warnings too, but all the way through central down to potentially southern Alabama, they were warning the entire line, and we're all dealing with that secondary wind threat. And just to point out something, Jeff, when we were looking at those power outage maps, it's not just one area. Typically, when we do severe weather coverage, you kind of just have that one area, maybe northern Madison County, that people are without power. Here, it's all over. It's everywhere, and that's because just about everyone saw some form of significant damaging wind with this as it rolled through. We'll continue to probably hear people reporting that they've got shingles off their roof, or even maybe a section of their roof could potentially be missing. A lot of outbuildings, the structures, the farmers that we have in the area will probably be reporting, hey, one of our outbuildings, even just a big sturdy shed sometime that maybe has a metal roof or something, that could be blown away. I'm sure trash cans scattered about, tree limbs, even just driving around your neighborhoods. Be careful on those roadways. It doesn't have to be a massive tree in the road. You don't want to be driving over big piles of tree limbs everywhere too. So the reports will continue.
They do. They just continue. West side of County Road 8 in Central Heights, multiple trees down, outdoor structures blown away and destroyed, metal barn roof peeling back, power is off and on. They say this wind is wicked. I believe 231 is blocked by a large tree down. I believe that's down into Morgan County. We've got people en route with chainsaws. Someone's trapped in the New Market area in their home. Again, no injuries reported with that. So we're really getting into seeing more and more damage and people out helping their neighbors. And again, always exercise safety when it comes to this. Again, I've got approaching 600 damaging wind reports here on my Facebook page. Some of them are a lot more significant than others, but we are all pretty much taking the brunt. Shingles starting to come off of homes. Here's some of these pictures coming in. Look at that. Where's that one there? I can't quite read that. Even Decatur. Yeah, Decatur was hit hard early today. And the problem, as I mentioned.
Oh.
Yeah. Sheffield. Yeah. Again, another person said, let's see, there were multiple roofs blown off of homes between Florence and Muscle Shoals, and they said it must have just happened because emergency crews haven't arrived yet. So again,
and
these
you guys
winds
at
continue.
Home can help submit these photos. Look at these are some bigger trees that we're seeing. Jeff, you're on First Alert 2, I think. Check out the maximum wind gust graphic here. These are just at particular sites. I know we're on one of the computers, but
there's that 77. That was that prior field that we had earlier. That was confirmed. 69 in Huntsville, 55 in Coleman. And some of those wind gusts east, that probably would think that there was going to be a little higher when we start to kind of wrap this up a little bit. See like areas like in Fort Payne where 49 seems a little low, and so does Scottsboro. We know that there was a tornado in that area just to the east of Scottsboro near Dutton as well. So yeah, the wind gusts, they certainly performed like the forecast models had indicated, whether it was with the line or before the line or right after the line. Yeah, damage widespread across the area.
And one of the I think the most unique reports was that sustained wind gust of 72-ish miles per hour. That was somewhere in Madison County. Sometimes it's 5 seconds. That's it. You get the one big surge. Usually we typically see these with collapsing thunderstorms. You get the microburst, especially during the summer months. You just get that one rush of wind, and that's that. Obviously causes damage, but to see it for a duration, and then we've got a high wind warning that continues through 6 o'clock this evening. Jeff, I saw you had the graphic up talking about these now gradient winds, potential long duration winds, 30 to 40 miles per hour. Look at these gusts too. The models though have been toning, the strongest winds have been subsiding a little bit earlier than they were last night with some of that model data. Even by 6 o'clock, that's going to feel like a very light breeze compared to the wind we've heard. We lost power here. Our generator kicked on in the middle of coverage. We're fortunate enough to have that. Not everyone at home could be saying the same thing, that they have generator power. That's why we're trying to tell you to charge those devices when you can through the day, through the morning hours, saying people are going to lose power. That was just about a guarantee with today's forecast. There's your high wind warning. First Alert Weather Day continues here. And just be careful out and about. We have a beautiful weekend, both Saturday and Sunday. Temperatures will be in the 60s. We will be sunny and dry, a lot less wind out there for the cleanup effort. So I don't encourage you to go out. Brad had some excellent pointers. It can wait. DeKalb County, you will be dropped from that watch here in just a couple of minutes. But we are going to wrap up our coverage here on television at least. We'll probably continue the stream here. You can find us on YouTube, Apple TV, Roku stick. We are on Facebook. You can find us just by typing us in on YouTube. We'll probably go over some of the storm reports, talk about some of the wind we're expecting for the rest of the day. But that's it for our first alert weather team coverage. For Chief Meteorologist Brad Travis, Meteorologist Jeff Desnoyers, and myself, Meteorologist Eric Burke, we appreciate the storm reports. You can post them on Brad's Facebook page, and we will relay them to the Weather Service. Thank you so much. Be safe and watch out for the strong wind for the rest of the afternoon and evening.